Welcome to Cello. At readcello.com, you create personalized novels based on your input. You can also find a library of ebooks and audiobooks just like this one. This free audiobook of Steel Shadows is brought to you by readcello.com. Enjoy the book. Steel Shadows has been written and narrated by the amazing team at readcello.com. Dedication. This book is dedicated to the adrenaline seeker. The adrenaline seeker reads for the rush. They crave high-stakes action, intense battles, and heart-pounding twists that keep them on the edge of their seat. For them, books are an experience, something that should grip them from page one and never let go. They don't just want a good story, they want a ride. They thrive on danger, tension, and urgency. Stories where survival is never guaranteed, where the protagonist is constantly pushed to their limits. Whether it's an action-packed fantasy, a relentless sci-fi thriller, or a pulse-pounding heist, they need momentum, intensity, and stakes that feel real. Steel Shadows. Chapter 1, Steel Shadows. Kael stepped into the dimly lit bar, his boots hitting the wooden floor with a purposeful stride. The air was thick with tension, filled with the low murmur of mercenaries exchanging whispers over their drinks. Worn faces, illuminated by flickering lights, studied him as he moved through the room, their eyes reflecting a mixture of wariness and recognition. He scanned the crowd, taking in the regulars with their hardened expressions, keenly aware of the danger that lingered in their midst. Kael focused on a small stage at the far end, where a few hardened fighters discussed their latest exploits. The subtle but fierce competition was evident, and Kael could practically feel the stakes rising with every story shared. He adjusted the straps of his leather gear, a reminder of the life he had chosen, a life of survival amidst chaos and uncertainty. There was no room for hesitation here. The city demanded strength, and weakness was rarely forgiven. Kael approached the bar, where the bartender wiped down the counter with a rag that had seen better days. With a nod, he ordered a drink, throwing a few coins onto the counter. The bartender raised an eyebrow, glancing at the coins before pouring a generous measure of something dark and potent. Kael took a sip, savoring the burn that chased away the lingering chill from outside. As he leaned back against the bar, he caught snippets of conversation from a nearby table, where a group of mercenaries animatedly discussed a job that piqued his interest. Hands gestured wildly, and Kael strained to listen, aware that the mention of high payouts could mean new opportunities in a city filled with shadows and secrets. The bartender leaned closer, lowering his voice, and mentioned something about the rumored deals being made under the table, a hint of danger that both thrilled and unsettled Kael. He studied the faces at the table, weighing their intentions, as the bar's atmosphere pulsed with the promise of new ventures and inevitable betrayals. Kael leaned in closer, his curiosity heightened as he focused on the group of mercenaries nearby. They were discussing not just any job, but one that involved swiping digital data from the heart of a rival syndicate, a task that could shift the balance of power in the city. The sparks of excitement danced in the air around them, intensity weaving through their words like a current. He caught phrases like deep security and the big payoff, stirring a hunger in him that he thought he had long buried. A flicker of recognition washed over Kael as he recognized one of the mercenaries, a grizzled veteran known for risky jobs. If they were involved, it wouldn't be a simple affair. This job presented both peril and opportunity, tangled together, like two sides of the same coin. Kael's shoulders squared as he considered the potential for advancement in his career, an opportunity to reclaim his status in a community where respect was earned through actions rather than words. Just then, a rival mercenary caught sight of Kael, his lips curling into a smirk as he sauntered over. "Look who decided to show his face," he sneered, the challenge evident in his tone. Kael met his eyes, a flash of tension crackling between them, memories of past conflicts surfacing in an instant. "You're wasting your time with those clowns," the rival continued, gesturing dismissively toward the table. "They'll get you killed." Kael felt a rush of irritation but held his ground, refusing to let the taunts bait him. "Maybe, but at least I'm not hiding in the shadows," Kael replied, his voice steady. The rival's laughter was sharp, but it was laced with a hint of uncertainty, revealing a crack in his bravado. Kael's heart raced. He knew he had to prove himself, and this job might just be his ticket back into the game. Kael turned away from the rival, shaking off the tension that lingered in the air. He refocused on the group at the table, where the conversation had shifted to logistics, proposals threading through their discussion. Listening intently, he noted how they navigated the intricate details of their plan, identifying security weaknesses and discussing potential exit strategies. His pulse quickened as he considered how they might need someone with his skills to pull this heist off successfully. Deciding to take the initiative, Kael approached the table uninvited, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Mind if I join in?" he asked, projecting confidence as he leaned against the table, ready to engage. The mercenaries exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to calculation, weighing the potential benefit of having him on board. The leader of the group, a seasoned mercenary with a scar running down his cheek, straightened up, sizing Kael up with a scrutinizing gaze. "You think you can handle the heat? Last job didn't end so well for you," he challenged, an edge of skepticism in his voice. Kael felt the weight of the statement, but he met the man's gaze unwaveringly. "I didn't come here to talk about the past," he replied, his tone steady. "I came to offer my skills for this job. I can get us in and out clean, no mess." The group members exchanged glances, weighing Kael's confidence against their uncertainties. "What makes you think we need you?" another member questioned, her tone wary but intrigued. "Because I've learned from my mistakes," Kael asserted, leaning in closer to emphasize his sincerity. "And because we all know the real money is in executing this job flawlessly." The tension in the air shifted slightly as they considered his words, the possibility of a new alliance sparking interest among them. Kael sensed the hesitance, but pushed forward, knowing this was his moment to reclaim his place in the mercenary world. He was determined not to let fear dictate his future any longer. Chapter 2, The Mercenary's Den. Kael sat at a dimly lit table in the back of the bar, his mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming job. He studied the scattering of maps and reports laid out before him, a jumble of intelligence he had gathered about the rival syndicate stronghold. His fingers traced the layouts, pausing at key intersections and potential entry points, each line drawing him deeper into the plans that could either make or break his reputation. Every so often, he glanced around the room, watching for any potential threats or allies that might be lingering in the shadows. The atmosphere buzzed with whispered conversations and low laughter, a stark contrast to the serious business on his mind. He felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on him, an unspoken tension that both excited and terrified him as the day of reckoning drew nearer. Kael leaned back in his chair, taking a moment to breathe as he considered the information before him. His eyes flickered to the bar's entrance, where a new group of mercenaries had just stepped inside, their presence adding a fresh layer of tension. Noticing one of them, an old contact named Rax, Kael weighed his options before deciding to reach out. He waved Rax over, and the man approached with a knowing smirk, settling into the chair opposite him. "What's got you so deep in thought?" Rax asked, eyeing the map spread across the table. Kael regarded him carefully, weighing how much to reveal. "I'm working on a big job and could use some insight on the syndicate's defenses," he said, looking Rax in the eye. Rax raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but cautious. "You know that's dangerous territory. You're still on their radar after last time." Kael nodded, feeling the weight of those words. "That's why I need to be prepared. Can you help?" Rax considered the request, shifting slightly in his seat, the smile fading as he recognized the gravity of Kael's mission. Rax leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he assessed Kael's determination. "Look, I'll tell you what I know," he began cautiously. "But you need to understand there are bigger players at stake here. You could be stepping into a trap." Kael met his gaze, unfazed. "I wouldn't have come to you if I wasn't aware of the risks." "What's the information?" Rax sighed, the weight of his knowledge evident in the crease of his brow. "They've reinforced their perimeter with new tech. I saw drones patrolling the area and extra guards at key points. If you're planning to breach, it won't be easy." Kael jotted down notes, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "Anything else?" "Yeah, there's a rumor circulating about an insider planning to flip on them. If you could convince this person to join your side. Kael's mind raced, considering the implications. This could turn the tide in their favor. Do you know who? I have a contact who might, but he's not reliable. You'd need to sweeten the deal. Kael nodded, absorbing the information, aware of the risk that came with it. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, the stakes climbing higher as he weighed his next moves. Kael felt a surge of determination as he weighed Rax's suggestion. Let's say I managed to convince your contact to switch sides, Kael replied, his tone measured. What's the risk? Rax leaned back, crossing his arms as he considered the question. The risk is considerable. You don't know who you can trust in this game. If there's even a whisper that you're looking to make a play, the syndicate won't hesitate to eliminate you. Kael nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of Rax's words. He considered what was at stake, not just for himself, but for his entire team. If I'm going to do this, I need an edge, he stated, his mind racing with potential strategies. What about gear or intel on their operations? Rax raised an eyebrow, a hint of respect creeping into his demeanor. I might be able to secure you some access to their tech, but you'll owe me one. Just be careful. This is a dangerous path. Kael extended his hand, sealing their agreement, feeling the weight of responsibility press upon him. Despite the doubts surrounding him, he felt a rush of clarity. I'll make it worth your while, he assured Rax, the resolve in his voice firm. This is not just about me anymore. It's about everyone who's been crushed under their rule. With a nod, Rax accepted the handshake, his expression shifting to one of cautious optimism. The lines were drawn, and the stakes were higher than ever. As Kael stood, he scanned the room one last time, the weight of the upcoming mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. Rax's words echoed in his mind, a mixture of caution and opportunity intertwining like smoke in the air. Let's regroup with the team, Kael said, pushing through the entryway and back into the bar's main area, the atmosphere turbulent with intrigue. He weaved through clusters of mercenaries, their eyes tracking him with a mix of acknowledgement and concern. He reached the table where his team gathered, their expressions revealing a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Listen up, Kael began, his voice steady yet firm. We have a critical lead on the syndicate's operations, and I believe we're ready to make our move. The sudden energy in the room surged, a palpable jolt of adrenaline surfacing as his team shifted from anxious to alert, ready to embark on the mission ahead. Are we sure about this? Maya asked, her tone serious but edged with eagerness. After what happened last time, we need to be prepared for anything. Kael met her gaze, determination flooding through him. We are prepared. We have a plan, backup intel, and potential allies. This time, we act decisively. With that declaration, the team's focus sharpened, inspired by Kael's unwavering confidence. As Kael laid out the details of their plan, he noticed the growing determination among his team. They responded to his words with nods of agreement, their resolve solidifying like steel under heat. Kael emphasized the importance of executing their roles with precision, redirecting focus from past failures to the success that lay ahead. Each of you holds a crucial piece of this puzzle, he said, making eye contact with each member, allowing his sincerity to resonate. Maya stepped forward, her enthusiasm reignited. I'll coordinate with our informants to ensure we have real-time updates, she declared, her confidence infectious as the team rallied around her. The energy in the room shifted as they shared a renewed sense of purpose, each person motivated to contribute to the mission. Kael stood back, watching as the group began to move with purpose, gathering weapons and resources, the atmosphere now charged with a sense of unity and strength. Chapter 3, The Job Offer. Kael leaned against the bar, his mind racing as he considered the risks ahead. The dim lighting cast harsh shadows across his face, making the tension in his brow even more pronounced. He pulled out a small notepad, filled with sketches and notes about the syndicate's stronghold. His fingers traced the outlines of entrances, security features, and potential escape routes, each line a testament to the planning that had gone into this moment. Kael took a deep breath, the familiar smells of the bar reminding him of the stakes involved, of everything he had sacrificed to reach this point. He recalled the discussions from earlier, the energy of the team fueling his resolve. Now it was time to move from planning to action, and he needed to ensure everyone was on the same page before they set out. Kael gathered the team in a secluded corner of the bar, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of a nearby lamp. He laid out the plans on the table, pointing to the marked entrances on the map while explaining their roles and the steps they would take to infiltrate the syndicate's stronghold. Timing is crucial, he emphasized, his voice steady as he outlined the sequence of events. Maya listened intently, nodding as she mentally plotted her own data retrieval points within the framework Kael had provided. Kael glanced at her, noticing the eagerness in her eyes and the determination etched on her face. "Stick to the plan, and we'll make it through," he added, wanting to instill confidence in their ability to execute the mission successfully. The surrounding chatter of the bar faded into the background as the team focused entirely on Kael, the weight of their shared purpose building in the air. Just then, Rax, having overheard snippets of their plan, approached with a cautious look on his face. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" he asked, crossing his arms. Kael recognized the concern in Rax's voice, the reminder of the risks hanging heavy in the air. "It's too late to back down now," Kael replied, frustration creeping into his tone. "We have the opportunity to hit them where it hurts." Rax shook his head, his expression a mix of skepticism and worry. "Just be careful. They won't take kindly to mercenaries poking around in their business. You could be walking into a trap." Kael met Rax's gaze with unwavering determination. "I know the risks, but if we don't act, they'll continue to flourish while we're stuck in their shadow." Rax studied him for a moment, weighing the conviction in Kael's eyes. Finally he sighed, a reluctant acceptance washing over him. "Just promise me you'll keep your head on straight." As Kael turned back to the team, he felt a flicker of irritation, but swiftly pushed it aside. He knew Rax was right to be cautious. The stakes had never been higher. "Let's stay focused," Kael said, raising his voice slightly to ensure everyone felt his presence. "I want everyone to go over your roles once more. We need to be seamless." Team members began to review their responsibilities, each nodding as they spoke about their tasks. Kael watched as Maya made notes on her pad, her determination evident as she jotted down backup plans. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension easing slightly as reassurance and organization filled the space. Kael felt a sense of pride. Their collaboration and commitment made the mission feel more tangible, fanning the flames of his resolve to lead effectively. As the final details were hashed out, Kael stepped aside for a moment, taking a deep breath to center himself. The bar around him buzzed with the sounds of clinking glasses and low conversations, a stark contrast to the focused energy of his team. He leaned against the cool wall, closing his eyes briefly as he replayed the plan in his mind, weighing every possibility and potential outcome. Each iteration of their strategy played over like a loop, and he knew the pressure to succeed was monumental, not just for him, but for every member of the team relying on this operation. After a moment, Kael rejoined the group, determination etched on his face. "All right, it's time," he announced, feeling the excitement and tension in the air shift as the moment of action approached. The team stood, a collective surge of energy and resolve coursing through them as they prepared to leave the bar behind. Kael could feel the anticipation in the air, the weight of their mission hanging heavily on everyone's shoulders. He exchanged nods with each member, their eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and readiness. "Stick to the plan, trust each other, and we'll make it through," he said, his voice steady but firm, a reminder of their capabilities as a united front. As they moved towards the exit, Kael caught a glimpse of the city outside, its shadows blending with the light of a fading day. This was a new beginning, a challenge that would define their futures, one that he was more than ready to face. Chapter 4, A Dangerous Encounter. As Kael and his team maneuvered through the darkened alleyways, the sense of urgency thickened around them like a dense fog. Each step echoed off the brick walls, a reminder of the risks they faced. Kael navigated with precision, watching for any sign of trouble while mentally plotting their routes to the target. The murmur of the city faded, replaced by the sound of their steady footfalls and hushed breaths. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye, and Kael signaled for the team to halt. Peering around the corner, he spotted a group of syndicate enforcers patrolling nearby, weapons at the ready, their faces obscured by the shadows of the night. Kael's heart raced as he calculated their next move, silently weighing the risks of advancing versus retreating. The faint sounds of laughter from the enforcers carried across the alley, a stark reminder of their careless confidence, and Kael felt a flush of determination surge within him. "Follow my lead," he whispered to his team, the urgency in his voice leaving no room for hesitation. He glanced at the available paths, mind racing to devise a plan on the spot. As he observed the guards' patterns, he noticed a slight gap between their patrol routes, and he made a quick decision to move toward the narrow side street, a chance he calculated could give them cover. Kael gestured for the team to follow and slipped into the shadows, adrenaline fueling his movements as they followed behind, each step aligning with the rhythm of his strategy. As Kael and the team slipped into the side street, they pressed against the cold, damp wall, bodies tense with anticipation. The shadows cloaked them, but doubt crept in as the sound of the enforcers faded behind them, leaving an eerie silence that felt heavier with each passing moment. Kael crouched down, motioning for the others to do the same, his eyes scanning for any movement in the darkness. He took a steadying breath, aware that every noise could betray them, every decision carried weight. Just as he began to formulate a plan, a sudden shout from the guards echoed down the alley, breaking the quiet and sending a ripple of fear through the team. "Did you hear that?" one of the team members whispered, eyes wide with uncertainty, cracking the facade of confidence that Kael had worked so hard to build. Kael felt the tension rise as panic threatened to take hold of the group, but he fought to keep his composure. "Stay quiet and stay low," he commanded, his voice steady but urgent. He quickly glanced toward the direction of the voices, weighing their options. "Now is not the time to freeze," he reminded them, instilling a sense of urgency. "We move when I say so," he continued, formulating a plan. With another breath to steady himself, Kael pointed toward a nearby doorway, half hidden by shadows, and beckoned the team to follow. The decision to move quietly was clear, but his heart raced, aware that any slip could cost them dearly. As they stealthily approached the doorway, Kael led the way, taking care to remain in the shadows and avoid the beams of light that flickered from the guards' flashlights. The adrenaline surged through him, heightening his senses as he listened for any sounds of pursuit. Once at the door, he turned the handle slowly and pushed it open, wincing at the creak of the hinges. Inside, the room was dark and empty, the faint smell of dust and disuse enveloping them. Kael glanced back to make sure the team was following, their eyes wide with apprehension but fueled by his resolve. "Stay close and keep quiet," he whispered, stepping inside with measured caution. As they settled into the darkness of the room, Kael quickly scanned the surroundings for anything useful. His eyes adjusted, revealing old crates stacked haphazardly against the walls and a large map pinned to the backboard, the ink faded but still legible. In the corner, a small table held an array of tools and a few vials of unknown substances, their purpose unclear. Kael felt a rush of hope at the sight. This could be critical for their mission. "Check this out," he murmured to Maya, who was now by his side. Her curiosity piqued as she approached the table, examining the supplies. Together, they began to gather everything they could, adrenaline coursing through them as they prepared to make their next move against the syndicate. Chapter 5, Betrayed by Shadows. As Kael and the team continued their preparations, a sudden quake reverberated through the building, sending a shudder through the walls. The noise was unmistakable, a warning that their time was running short. Kael's heart raced as he exchanged worried glances with his teammates, the fear of being discovered tightening the atmosphere. "Get ready," he urged, his voice sharp with urgency as he led them to secure the tools and intel they had gathered. A faint shout echoed from outside, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching their location. Kael motioned for silence, the adrenaline sharpening his focus as he quickly strategized their next move, feeling the weight of responsibility settle firmly on his shoulders. Kael quickly gathered the supplies, his mind racing as he weighed their options. "All right, we need to find another way out," he said, scanning the room for an exit. Maya pointed toward a small window high up on one wall, barely visible from their current position. "It's a risk, but it might be our best shot," she suggested, glancing at the rest of the team for consensus. Kael nodded, recognizing the urgency in their situation and the potential of her idea. "Let's do it. I'll boost you up," he replied, stepping forward and preparing to lift Maya, the adrenaline pushing him to act. Together, they worked as a unit, forming a human ladder as Kael hoisted Maya toward the window, their teamwork a testament to the bond they had forged through adversity. As Kael lifted Maya higher, he felt the strain in his arms, but he focused on the urgency driving them forward. Maya's feet found purchase on his shoulders, and she reached for the window ledge, her fingers brushing against the rough surface. "Come on, just a little more," she urged, determination echoing in her voice. Suddenly, an unexpected commotion erupted outside, and the sounds of hurried footsteps grew louder, sending a jolt of fear through the group. "Pick it up! We don't have much time!" Kael called out, signaling the others to stay alert. With a final push, Maya grasped the ledge and hoisted herself up, just as the door behind them rattled, a sharp reminder of the urgency of their escape. Maya pulled herself through the window, and Kael could hear her muffled voice calling for him to hurry. "Kael, you need to get up here," she urged, glancing back, her eyes wide with urgency. He quickly helped the next teammate up as they scrambled to access the window. "Go, go!" he shouted, adrenaline pumping as he felt the pressure mounting behind him. The others scrambled eagerly, their hearts racing as the sounds of enforcers grew closer, and Kael could feel the tension crackling in the air. "Get moving! I'll cover you," he declared, turning back to face the door, weapon ready as he positioned himself to defend against any potential threats. His grip on the weapon tightened, not just for protection, but as a promise to himself that he would see them all through this escape. Just as the last team member climbed through the window, the door burst open, and a group of enforcers flooded into the room, weapons drawn. Kael's heart raced as he fired off a warning shot, the sound echoing like thunder in the confined space. "Go, now," he yelled, forcing his voice to carry above the chaos as he backed toward the window, ready to cover their escape. His teammates scrambled to get out, the urgency fueling their movements. Kael could see their determination, but he also sensed the fear rising in them as the enforcers spread throughout the room, searching for the source of the commotion. With one last glance, Kael jumped through the window, landing in a crouch on the ground outside, adrenaline surging as he risked a final look back to ensure everyone was clear. The team landed in a tight alleyway, gasping for breath as they regrouped under the dim light of a flickering street lamp. Kael quickly motioned for everyone to huddle close, the urgency still crackling in the air. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, scanning their faces for any signs of injury or distress. Maya nodded, her eyes bright with adrenaline, while the others exchanged relieved glances, grateful to have made it out. "We need to move," Kael urged, feeling the weight of time pressing down on them. He led them deeper into the labyrinth of alleyways, adrenaline still pumping as they made their way toward safety. Despite the chaos they left behind, a sense of determination washed over Kael, reminding him that they were still standing and the mission wasn't over yet. Chapter 6, The Marked Target. As Kael and the team navigated through the winding alleys, the weight of their escape hung heavy in the air. The adrenaline from their narrow escape began to wear off, leaving behind exhaustion and the lingering tension of their recent confrontation. Kael took stock of their surroundings, the crumbling buildings and flickering lights casting looming shadows on the streets. "Let's find a safe place to regroup and assess our next steps," he suggested, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. He led the team toward an abandoned warehouse, a familiar sight that offered some semblance of safety amidst the chaos. "What's the plan now?" Arlen asked, glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting the syndicate to emerge from the shadows, ready to strike again. Once inside the warehouse, Kael gestured for everyone to take positions against the walls, seeking cover in the dim light. He quickly assessed the space, noting the piles of debris and old machinery that could provide additional barricades if needed. "First, we need to check our supplies and regroup," he instructed, his tone firm. Maya began to unpack their gear, her hands moving methodically as she separated weapons from the equipment. Kael turned his attention to a cracked window, peering outside to watch for any signs of movement. "Keep your eyes peeled. The syndicate won't rest after what just happened," he reminded the team as his pulse quickened with the need for vigilance. As they began to settle in, the atmosphere shifted, and one team member, visibly shaken, broke the silence. "I can't believe we just left a team member behind," he said, his voice thick with anxiety. Kael turned to him, sensing the rising tension. "We made the right call," he replied, trying to project confidence despite the nagging doubts in his own mind. Maya chimed in, offering her perspective. "We had to prioritize our safety to regroup. We can go back for them when it's safe." Kael felt the weight of their eyes on him, the pressure mounting as he balanced their need for reassurance with the harsh reality of their situation. "Right now, we need to focus on our next steps," he urged, trying to steer the conversation toward action rather than remorse. With resolve, he added, "Once we stabilize and gather intel, we'll find a way to rescue our ally." Kael took a moment to gauge the reactions of his team, watching the anxiety shift to a focused determination as they realized the importance of their next move. "Let's brainstorm what we know about the syndicate's movements," he suggested, eager to channel their energy into something productive. As they began discussing potential tactics, Maya shared intel she'd gathered before the ambush, detailing the guard rotations and possible weak points in their defenses. "Given what we've seen, we can exploit these gaps," she asserted, her confidence returning as she recalled the details of their target location. Kael nodded, feeling a pulse of solidarity forming among the team. "Exactly, and we can use the resources we collected to enhance our chances," he added, reinforcing the sense of teamwork that had begun to mend their earlier fractures. As the discussion progressed, Kael felt a surge of energy flowing through the team, the earlier tension dissipating as they found common ground. Team members began to bounce ideas off one another, developing strategies and creative solutions with renewed vigor. Kael watched as Arlen stepped forward, suggesting they set up a network of distractions around the perimeter to divert attention from their actual movements. "That way, we can create openings to rescue our ally without drawing too much heat," he explained, his enthusiasm infectious. "Great thinking," Kael replied, appreciating Arlen's proactive approach as he felt that sense of unity solidifying further. This collaborative spirit resonated deeply with Kael, who recognized that their combined strength was what would ultimately lead them to success. With the plan solidified, Kael stepped back to address the team, feeling the weight of their expectations settle on his shoulders. "Remember, we're doing this not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered under the syndicate's rule," he reminded them, his voice resonating with conviction. They all nodded, a shared understanding bonding them as they prepared to embark on the rescue mission. "Let's stay sharp and stick together," he added, reinforcing the need for unity and focus as they moved forward. As they geared up and final checks were made, Kael felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement bubbling within him, knowing that this moment defined not just their mission, but also his growth as a leader. With one last rallying cry, he led them out of the warehouse, stepping into the unknown, ready to confront whatever awaited them ahead. Chapter 7: The Chase begins. As Kael and his team stealthily approached the rival syndicate stronghold, the tension in the air was palpable. The night was thick with shadows, the moonlight casting eerie patterns on the ground as they moved carefully through the overgrown courtyard. Kael's heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread, his senses heightened as he took in every detail around him. He paused to scan the perimeter, observing the guards walking in their established patterns, identifying the best time to slip past undetected. "Stay alert," he whispered, glancing at his team, their expressions a mirror of his own determination and anxiety. Every sound echoed like a warning bell, but the adrenaline coursing through him kept them moving forward, each step bringing them closer to their mission's goal. Kael led the team into position, crouching low against the wall as they approached the main entrance. "Keep your eyes open for any hidden cameras or traps," he instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. They moved cautiously, scanning for signs of surveillance, each member performing their role with precision. Suddenly, a faint noise to Kael's left caught his attention, a guard shifting in the shadows. He raised a hand, signaling for everyone to halt, his heart beating faster as he analyzed the situation. With a nod from Maya, who had positioned herself to get a better view, they waited, tension mounting as they prepared to react to any potential threat. As the guard came into view, Kael's instincts kicked in. He signaled to his team to stay low as he assessed the guard's movements, noting the moment when they turned their back, lost in conversation with another enforcer. "Now," Kael whispered urgently, his heart pounding as he rushed toward the guard with Maya silently at his side. In a swift motion, Kael tackled the guard to the ground, muffling their startled shout, while Maya quickly ensured no one else was nearby. With the guard subdued, Kael tied their hands with a length of rope from his pack, ensuring they wouldn't alert others. After a moment, he leaned close to the guard and said firmly, "We're not here to hurt you, just to get what we need. Keep quiet, and we won't have a problem." With the guard secured, Kael gestured for the team to move on quickly, his urgency evident as they proceeded deeper into the stronghold. Maya followed closely, her eyes scanning for any additional threats, her instincts sharp after the close call. "Remember, we need to stay focused," Kael reminded the group, leading them toward a corridor lined with flickering lights and the faint hum of machinery. As they moved through the narrow space, Kael felt a mix of excitement and anxiety, the weight of responsibility resting heavy on his shoulders. They reached a door that appeared to lead to a central operations room, and Kael paused to listen for any sounds from within. The tension hung in the air as he glanced at his teammates, each member ready to execute their role while trusting in the plans they had prepared together. After hearing muffled voices from behind the door, Kael turned to his team, whispering a quick assessment of their next steps. "We go in fast, grab the data, and get out. No hesitation," he instructed, feeling the adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared for the next move. Maya nodded, checking her gear once more, while Arlen's gaze flickered with a mix of anticipation and doubt. "Are we ready for this?" "What if they're more prepared than we think?" he voiced, revealing the nerves that lingered among the group. Kael stepped closer, his expression firm. "We'll adapt as needed. Remember our strategy. Trust in each other, and we'll make it through." With the team's eyes reflecting a newfound determination, Kael pushed open the door, stepping into the unknown with all the resolve he could muster. As the door swung open, Kael was met with the sights and sounds of a bustling operations room filled with screens and mercenaries hard at work. He quickly assessed the layout, spotting the main terminal they needed to access on the far side of the room. "Move. Stay low," he commanded, leading the team into the chaos, their bodies blending into the shadows of the room. Maya and Arlen followed closely, each aware of the stakes as they maneuvered past busy technicians and guards who remained oblivious to their presence. Kael's heart pounded as they drew closer to the terminal, adrenaline sharp in his veins, a reminder of the perilous path they had chosen. Just then, a nearby guard glanced in their direction, and Kael felt time slow. Everything hinged on his next move. Chapter 8, The Decision. Kael's instincts kicked in as he spotted the guard approaching, their sharp eyes scanning for anything out of the ordinary. "Everyone, freeze," he whispered urgently, his voice barely audible amidst the room's noise. He pressed himself against a wall, heart racing as he assessed the situation, weighing the risk of remaining hidden versus the need to act quickly. Maya crouched beside him, her breath steady as she prepared her weapon, ready to respond. Kael could feel the weight of uncertainty in the air, and a sense of urgency coursed through him as he considered their options. With a quick glance at the terminal, he realized they had to act before the opportunity slipped away. The intel they needed was crucial, and every second counted. "On my mark, we move to the terminal," he decided, setting his jaw with determination. As the guard drew closer, Kael's pulse quickened, and he fought the urge to act prematurely. "Now," he whispered, and in unison, he and Maya darted toward the terminal, moving with purpose and precision. Kael reached the console first, his fingers flying over the keys, searching for the data they needed, while Maya kept a watchful eye on the guard's movements. The screen flickered to life, displaying encrypted files and vital information, but time was slipping away. Come on, he murmured under his breath, frustration creeping in as the encryption software slowed his progress. Maya, sensing his growing anxiety, quickly turned and aimed her weapon at the guard, who had begun to approach with suspicion. Just as Kael finally cracked the encryption, the guard took another step forward, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Hey, what are you doing there?" the guard shouted, alerting others in the room. Maya's grip tightened on her weapon, adrenaline surging through her as she assessed the risk of confrontation against the necessity of time. "Kael," she called out, her voice sharp, as the atmosphere shifted dramatically. "Almost got it," he replied, refusing to look away from the glowing screen, desperate to extract the information before they were discovered. The rapid footsteps of approaching enforcers sent a jolt of urgency through the room, fueling Kael's determination and heightening the tension as he prepared for the unexpected chaos. Kael's fingers raced across the keyboard as he fought to extract the critical data, urgency overriding any doubts that crept into his mind. Just a bit more, he urged, awareness of the approaching guards sharpening his focus. Maya stood her ground, her stance defensive as she prepared for any confrontation, her eyes darting between the terminal and the doorway. "Kael, we need to move before they get here," she shouted, her voice laced with adrenaline. He could feel the pressure mounting, realizing they had to act quickly or risk being overwhelmed. In one final push, Kael successfully downloaded the necessary files to a secure drive, snatching it from the terminal just as the first guard burst through the door. Kael spun around just in time to see the guard charge toward him, a weapon drawn. "Maya, now!" he shouted, adrenaline flooding his veins as he shifted into a defensive stance. Maya reacted instantly, her shot ringing out as she aimed at the guard, forcing him to duck for cover and buy them crucial seconds. "Fall back," Kael yelled, his instincts kicking in as he ushered the team toward the back exit. They dashed toward the doorway, but another guard appeared, and Kael felt a rush of panic mixed with determination. Using the skills he had honed during previous encounters, he tossed a smoke grenade toward the advancing enforcers. The cloud of smoke engulfed the room, momentarily blinding their pursuers as Kael and his team slipped into the chaos, their hearts racing with the thrill of escape. Kael led the team through the smoke-filled corridor, the scent of gunpowder mingling with the damp air as they pressed forward. His heart raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins, urging him to stay focused. "Stick together," he commanded, his voice cutting through the haze as they maneuvered around crates and debris, keeping low to avoid detection. The chaos of the unfamiliar surroundings only heightened his instincts, and he felt the weight of responsibility for his team bearing down on him. They navigated through dimly lit passages, emerging into a larger area where the noise of the conflict faded just enough for Kael to gather his thoughts. "We have to find a way out before they regroup," he urged, the urgency in his voice echoing the need for swift action as they prepared to escape the stronghold once and for all. Chapter 9, The Point of No Return. Kael led the team further into the stronghold, their focus narrowing as they approached a series of heavily fortified doors. Each step felt heavier as the reality of their mission settled in. Failure was not an option. He paused, listening intently for any signs of movement beyond the doors, the tension thickening with the anticipation of what lay ahead. "Stay sharp," he whispered, putting a hand on the cold metal handle, feeling the pulse of the moment resonate through him. With a deep breath, Kael pushed the door open, revealing a large room bustling with syndicate members who were clearly unaware of the threat approaching. The sight of so many adversaries at once was both intimidating and exhilarating, and Kael quickly signaled for the team to hold positions, strategizing their next move amidst the chaos. Kael crouched low, eyes scanning the room for potential threats and exits, as the group of syndicate members continued to chatter, oblivious to the incoming danger. He could hear bits and pieces of their conversation about shipments and security updates, crucial information that could turn the tides of their infiltration. "Now's our chance," he whispered to Maya, who was poised and ready at his side, her breathing controlled as she prepared her weapon. Kael focused on the nearest syndicate member, noting their body language and posture, calculating the best moment to strike. On my mark, he instructed the team, every muscle in his body tensed for action as he connected the dots between their intelligence and the unfolding scene. Finally, with conviction, he raised a hand, ready to initiate a swift strike that would catch the syndicate off guard and pave the way for their objective. As Kael issued the command, chaos erupted in the room. He sprang forward, launching himself at the nearest syndicate member, catching them off guard before they even had a chance to react. Maya followed suit, her weapon steady as she covered him, taking down another guard with precision. The room exploded into action, shouts and screams piercing through the air as Kael and his team fought to regain control of the situation. Kael felt a rush of adrenaline as he exchanged blows with another enforcer, every movement a reminder of his commitment to this fight and to his team. "Push through," he shouted, urging his teammates to maintain momentum as they pushed deeper into the fray, determined to secure their objective amidst the chaos. With the room thrown into chaos, Kael darted toward the main terminal, his heart pounding as he navigated through the melee. He could see a group of syndicate members scrambling to respond to the sudden attack, their caution spiraling into panic. "Cover me," he called out to the team, urgency lacing his voice as he focused on the glowing screen in front of him. Maya and Arlen took positions behind barricades, firing with accuracy to keep the enforcers at bay, creating a protective perimeter as Kael let his fingers fly over the keyboard. Data streamed across the terminal, and Kael's mind raced, working to sift through the noise for vital information. He could feel the weight of his team's expectations as they fought to maintain the upper hand, knowing that success hinged on him retrieving the necessary intel before reinforcements arrived. As Kael struggled to bypass the security protocols, the weight of the chaos around him intensified. "Kael, they're closing in," Maya yelled, her voice cutting through the clatter of gunfire and shouting. He felt the pressure mounting, a pulse of urgency driving him to work faster, knowing that every second counted. "Almost there," he replied, his heart racing as he finally cracked the encryption. The screen displaying valuable intel that could shift the balance against the syndicate. Just then, a sharp pain coursed through his shoulder as a stray bullet grazed him, forcing him to refocus. Grimacing but undeterred, Kael continued his task, determined to secure the data and lead them through this chaos to victory. With a final keystroke, the data began downloading, a wave of relief washing over Kael amid the chaos. "Got it," he shouted, barely able to contain the thrill of their success, his focus shifting to the retreat. Maya covered him, firing at the approaching guards, her movements swift and precise, ensuring they had the time needed to escape. "Let's move," Kael urged, quickly gathering the drive and tucking it securely into his pocket. As they turned to flee, a sudden explosion rocked the room, sending debris flying and forcing them to stagger. "Go, go," he yelled, adrenaline pumping as he took charge, directing the team toward the nearest exit, their instincts kicking in as they navigated the crumbling terrain. Chapter 10. Breaching the Stronghold. Kael and his team burst through a side exit, emerging into the cool night air, their breaths coming in heaving gasps. The sounds of chaos, gunfire, and shouting faded as they pressed on, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Kael quickly glanced around, assessing their surroundings to formulate a plan for the next phase of their mission. He could see the looming shadows of the stronghold behind them, the flickering lights highlighting the destruction they had left in their wake. "Are we clear?" Maya asked, her eyes darting to the street where they had emerged, scanning for any signs of pursuit. Kael took a moment to steady himself, noting the dim alleyways leading off the main street. A perfect opportunity for them to regroup and plan their next move. Kael motioned for the team to follow him down a narrow alley, the shadows providing a cloak of safety as they threaded through the debris-littered path. He could feel the tension hang in the air, each member acutely aware of the stakes as they navigated their way to a nearby safe house. "Let's regroup and assess what we've gathered," he said, keeping his voice low but firm, determined to maintain focus amid the uncertainty. As they emerged into a small courtyard hidden from street view, Kael quickly began organizing their intel, spreading out the documents and data they'd stolen from the syndicate. Maya stepped beside him, her fingers tracing the lines of a map as she began plotting their next moves based on the information. Kael watched her work, proud of the teamwork unfolding before him, feeling a surge of confidence in their shared mission as they forged ahead. As the team gathered around the makeshift table, Kael initiated a discussion about their next strategic move. He pointed to a particularly detailed section of the map, outlining potential vulnerabilities and paths they could exploit within the syndicate's operations. "Here's where we can make our entrance," he explained, his finger tapping against a marked area. Maya leaned in, her brow furrowed, as she pointed out a tighter defense that they hadn't initially accounted for. "There's an extra guard unit here that could complicate things," she noted, her tone serious, prompting murmurs of uncertainty among the others. Kael felt a rush of frustration but quickly refocused, realizing that this kind of information could be pivotal in refining their approach. "Let's adapt. We can create distractions here and here," he said, altering their plans based on the gathered insights, embodying the responsive leadership that had developed throughout their journey. As Kael laid out the revised plan, he could see the skepticism flickering in the eyes of some of his team members. Arlen crossed his arms, glancing at the map with doubt lingering in the back of his mind. "Are you sure we can pull this off? We've lost good people already." Kael took a breath, steadying himself against the weight of the moment. "I understand the risks, but we've learned from our past encounters. We can't let fear dictate our actions." Maya chimed in, supporting Kael's resolve. "We've succeeded before by adapting our strategies," she added, looking around the group, urging them to trust in their capabilities. Kael noticed the shift in the team as they began to nod, an understanding settling among them that the best path forward required collective trust and effort. "Let's put our trust in each other." "We've got this," he said, instilling confidence as he pointed out the areas where they could adjust their tactics. His leadership strengthened through the shared experience. As the team concluded their discussion, Kael felt the adrenaline start to build again, mingling with the determination that had solidified throughout their planning sessions. He assigned roles, emphasizing the importance of each member's strengths, ensuring that everyone understood their part in executing the mission. "Arlen, you're on distraction duty. Maya, keep an eye on our entry point. We'll need backup if things go sideways," he instructed, his voice firm and clear. The team members nodded, a renewed sense of purpose igniting their resolve. Kael felt a sense of pride swell within him. He was no longer just a soldier, but a leader, capable of guiding others through uncertainty and doubt. Their previous losses weighed on his mind, but he pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand and the trust they had built together. "Let's move out and make this count," he declared, stepping toward the exit with confidence, knowing that each decision led them closer to their goal. As Kael stepped outside, the cool night air hit him, a reminder of the stakes layered with the tension of what lay ahead. The familiar streets now felt charged with purpose and danger, his senses heightened as he surveyed the area. He turned to his team, their faces a mix of determination and apprehension, each person ready to push forward. "Stay close and follow the plan," he reiterated, instilling a sense of unity as they moved together along the darkened alleys. Kael led the way, confidence surging through him with each step, knowing that the decisions made in the moments prior had set them on the right path. With each calculated move, he could feel the weight of leadership settling into place, igniting within him an unwavering resolve to see this mission through to its conclusion. Chapter 11, The Dark Hallways. As Kael and his team advanced through the dimly lit corridors of the stronghold, they felt the oppressive weight of uncertainty bearing down on them. The sounds of distant chatter and machinery pulsed through the air, making the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Kael moved cautiously, eyes darting between doorways and corners, each shadow potentially concealing a guard or another obstacle. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, heightening his senses as he remained acutely aware of the stakes involved. "Stay quiet and keep your weapons ready," he whispered to the group, glancing back to ensure they were all following closely behind. Every step echoed with purpose as they pressed further into the heart of the syndicate's operations, determination propelling them toward their goal. As they approached the heavily secured door leading to the central operations room, Kael could feel the tension in the air thickening. He paused, pressing his ear against the cold metal surface, straining to hear any conversation inside. The hushed tones of syndicate members reached his ears, a mix of reassurances and orders that sent a chill down his spine. "Now or never," Kael murmured, turning to the team with a determined look. He took a step back and surveyed them, nodding at Maya, who was readying her equipment and adjusting her stance with focused precision. With a swift motion, he pushed open the door and stepped inside, the world beyond it suddenly erupting into chaos as they drew the attention of the startled enforcers within. As Kael and his team rushed into the operations room, chaos erupted. Syndicate members shouted in surprise, scrambling to grab weapons and regain control of the situation. "Cover the exits," Kael commanded, instinctively directing his team as he caught sight of several enforcers reaching for their guns. Maya quickly took a position behind a nearby desk, firing at the closest threat and effectively suppressing the initial wave of attacks. Arlen moved to flank the left side, using the element of surprise to take out another guard before they could react. Kael's heart pumped wildly as he sprinted toward the main control console, his goal clear even amid the chaos: to retrieve vital information that could cripple the Syndicate's operations. Kael reached the control console, his hands flying over the keypad as he began to upload critical data, eyes darting toward the ongoing skirmish around him. The sounds of gunfire echoed in his ears, but he focused on the screen, navigating through layers of security with urgency. Behind him, he could hear Maya calling out updates, her voice steady despite the chaos, keeping the team informed of approaching threats. "Two on your right," she shouted, and Kael instinctively shifted, ducking as a bullet whizzed past, narrowly missing him. "Thanks," he called back, adrenaline coursing through him as he forced himself to concentrate, aware that the stakes were higher than ever. With the data nearly completed, he could feel the weight of victory within reach, but a nervous tension lingered in the air, pressing him to execute the plan flawlessly. Just as the final data packet uploaded, a loud crash resonated through the room, causing Kael to glance over his shoulder. A group of syndicate reinforcements burst into the operations room, weapons drawn and eyes filled with rage, and Kael's heart skipped a beat. "More incoming," Maya yelled, her voice a mixture of urgency and determination as she shifted her focus to the new threat. Kael quickly hit the button to finalize the upload, adrenaline pumping as he pivoted to face the new attackers, ready to protect his team at all costs. "Arlen, get to the door! Block them off!" he commanded, his authority steadying the team as they regrouped. With the data secured, he felt a surge of determination, knowing they had to hold their ground, resolve bolstered by the knowledge that their careful planning was beginning to pay off. Kael quickly maneuvered to position himself between the encroaching syndicate enforcers and his team, determination thickening the air around him. "Hold your ground," he shouted, his voice booming over the rising chaos as he steadied his weapon, ready for the fight. Maya stood at his side, her expression fierce as she fired at the approaching enemies, complementing Kael's defensive stance. Arlen swiftly moved to block the exit, creating a barrier with debris, while the rest of the team regrouped behind Kael, their confidence bolstered by his leadership. The tension in the room escalated as they exchanged fire, the stakes rising with each passing second, but Kael's resolve remained unshaken. "On my count, we push forward," he declared, rallying his team, their shared focus sharpening in response to his command as they prepared for the next wave of confrontation. Chapter 12. The Data Vault. As the dust settled after the tumultuous battle, Kael surveyed the chaos that surrounded them. The room was littered with debris and remnants of the conflict, the air thick with the acrid smell of smoke and gunpowder. Disorientation faded, replaced by a heavy realization of the costs they had incurred. Kael felt the weight of loss sink in as he counted heads, ensuring everyone was accounted for, but his heart sank when he noticed an empty spot where one of their allies had fallen. He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "We need to regroup and assess what we have left," he urged, his voice steady as he rallied the remaining team members, knowing their next steps depended entirely on the resources and information they could salvage from the situation. Kael began sorting through the scattered documents and equipment hastily abandoned during the chaos. His fingers brushed against the cold metal of the equipment, assessing what could still be useful. He spread the items across a table, mentally cataloging each piece while his team gathered around, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. "What do we have?" Maya asked, her brow furrowed as she examined a few of the devices. Kael pointed to a stack of files. "These contain intel on their operations. We can use this to strike back, but we need to act fast." The urgency in his voice reignited a spark in the group, and they immediately began discussing how best to deploy the gathered resources for their next move. As the discussion intensified, Kael noticed a mix of hopeful and skeptical expressions on the faces of his team members. One team member, his hands trembling slightly, voiced his concerns. "Are we really ready to take them on again? What if we fail?" Kael felt the gravity of the question hang in the air. "We need to be realistic about our chances, but we can't let fear paralyze us," he replied, his tone firm. Maya interjected, affirming Kael's stance. "We've seen their weaknesses. If we can exploit those, we stand a chance." Kael appreciated her support, and he caught a glimpse of determination rising in the group, seeing them push past their doubts to focus on the mission ahead. Kael stepped back, taking a moment to gather his thoughts as the team debated the next steps. He scanned the room, noticing the wariness etched on their faces, mixed with a flicker of determination. "Listen," he began, his voice cutting through the noise. "We've faced adversity before, and I know it's tough to bounce back, but our losses have taught us valuable lessons. This time, we use that knowledge to our advantage." He felt a ripple of energy flow through the group as they absorbed his words, the shared experience igniting a sense of purpose. "I've made mistakes, and I'm learning. What matters now is how we apply what we've learned. We need to outsmart them. That's our best option." With every word, he could see the shift in their body language, confidence growing as they united under a common goal. Kael rallied the team, assigning specific roles that played to each member's strengths and expertise. "Maya, you lead the intel extraction. We need your eyes on their communications. Arlen, I want you coordinating distractions to keep the guards occupied." He felt a rush of determination as he spoke, each assignment reinforcing the structure that would help them succeed. "Keep in constant contact. If anything feels off, adjust on the fly," he added, emphasizing the need for adaptability within their plan. The team began to move, their responses quickening as they embraced their roles, camaraderie shining through the tension. Kael watched them, a swell of pride coursing through him as he realized how far they had come, not just as individuals, but as a team ready to face whatever came next. As the team finalized their preparations, Kael felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling within him. "Let's move," he commanded, leading the way out of the hideout and back toward the heart of the syndicate's territory. The night air was crisp, and the sense of impending chaos loomed large as they made their way through the alley. Kael kept a firm grip on his weapon, adrenaline sharpening his senses as they neared their target. Around him, he could sense the team's resolve solidifying, each member embracing their roles and the potential risks ahead. With every step, he reflected on the journey that had led them to this moment, knowing that their combined strength and newfound trust would forge the path to victory. Chapter 13, Facing Betrayal Again. As Kael and his team approached the entrance to the syndicate's stronghold, the atmosphere thickened with tension. They had gathered outside the gate, shadows stretching long in the pale moonlight as they prepared for the next phase of their mission. Kael took a moment to survey the surroundings, listening intently for any signs of movement from within. "Stay sharp," he reminded the team, his voice low but firm, as they exchanged glances filled with determination and anxiety. With every heartbeat, the stakes felt higher, and he sensed the weight of their expectations resting on his shoulders. "Let's move," he urged, leading the way forward as they stepped into the lion's den, ready to confront whatever awaited them inside. Kael led the way through the entrance, his senses heightened as they slipped into the dim interior of the stronghold. The air was thick with tension, and he could hear the faint sounds of voices echoing from deeper within, a cacophony of discussions that hinted at the syndicate's operations in full swing. "Take positions," he whispered, gesturing for them to spread out and take cover behind nearby crates and equipment. Maya moved swiftly to a vantage point, her eyes scanning the area for potential threats and opportunities. Kael focused on the layout, using the intel they had gathered to plan their next moves, his heart pounding with anticipation. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, the stakes of the mission unfolding as they prepared to confront the syndicate head-on. As the team settled into their positions, Kael felt the weight of determination mixed with tension reverberate through the air. Maya pointed out a cluster of syndicate members gathered around a table, deep in discussion, unaware of the impending danger. "Now's our chance," she whispered, her voice steady and focused. Kael nodded, ready to take action, but a sudden noise from behind caused them to freeze. A group of guards emerged from a side corridor, their voices raised as they made their way towards the main area, bringing the thrill of immediate danger that sent adrenaline surging through Kael. "Change of plans," he murmured, quickly recalibrating their approach as he assessed the situation, his mind racing to adapt to these unexpected variables. Kael quickly gestured for the team to hold their positions as the guards passed by, their conversation booming in the silence of the room. He felt the pulse of urgency quicken, aware that any misstep could tip the balance of their operation. "Wait for them to clear out," he whispered, focusing intently on the guards as they moved deeper into the stronghold. Maya gave him an encouraging nod, her nerves tempered by his calm demeanor. As the guards disappeared from view, Kael took a moment to collect himself, weighing their options against the clock, knowing they could not afford to linger. "Once they're gone, we make our move," he decided, focusing on the layout of the room and recalibrating their approach, prepared to seize the moment when it presented itself. Once the corridor fell silent, Kael motioned for them to advance, adrenaline igniting his movements as they slipped out from their hiding spots. With careful steps, he led the team toward the table where the syndicate's members had been discussing their operations, urgency driving each footfall. "Remember, grab what you can and don't engage unless necessary," he reminded the team, setting the tone for their covert approach. Maya darted to the edge of the table, scanning the documents scattered across its surface as Kael kept watch for any signs of returning guards. Kael felt the thrill of the mission surge within him. The rush of taking charge played a key role in his transformation as a leader. With Maya's prompt and focused actions, they began gathering intelligence, their camaraderie shining as they worked in tandem, the stakes driving them forward despite the ever-persistent sense of danger surrounding them. As Kael and Maya sifted through the documents, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, sending a ripple of tension through the room. "Fast! We need to move," Kael urged, his heart racing as he snatched a folder that looked promising. Maya grabbed a few more files, glancing back at Kael with wide eyes, anxiety mingling with determination as they hurried to secure everything. "Do you think we can get out before they come back?" she asked, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. Kael nodded, his focus unwavering. "We will. Just stay sharp and keep an eye on the exit." With the documents in hand, they made a quick retreat toward their planned escape route, the adrenaline of their successful intel retrieval propelling them forward despite the uncertainty looming around them. Chapter 14, The Rescue. Kael and his team regrouped in a hidden alcove, adrenaline still coursing through their veins as they caught their breath after the narrow escape. The weight of the data they had just retrieved sat heavily in Kael's hands, a mix of urgency and hope fueling his next decisions. He turned to Arlen, who was examining the intel, and asked, "What do you think? Can we use this to gain leverage?" Arlen nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Absolutely. This could expose their operations and give us the upper hand, but we need to be smart about how we approach this." Listening intently, Kael felt the importance of their next moves settling over him like a heavy cloak, realizing they were on the brink of something significant. "We have to find those connections and make the right allies," Kael replied, his resolve hardening as he strategized their approach for this new phase of their mission. Kael spent the next few moments carefully reviewing the documents, his mind racing as he pieced together the information. He marked key points that detailed the syndicate's supply routes and potential weaknesses, finally seeing a path forward. Here, he called to Maya and Arlen, pointing at a passage that outlined a shipment schedule. If we target this route, we can disrupt their operations at a critical moment. Maya leaned closer, her eyes scanning the lines. This looks solid, but we'll need to time it perfectly. If we miss our window, we could put ourselves in danger. Kael felt a burst of confidence at her input, recognizing the value of their collaboration. Let's set up another meeting with Rhea. She might help us connect the dots and bring in more allies, he suggested, considering their options. His strategic thinking flowed naturally, each decision strengthened by the knowledge they had gathered and the experiences they had shared as a team. As Kael outlined their strategy, he noticed Arlen shifting uneasily. "Are you sure we can trust Rhea?" he asked, a hint of skepticism lacing his voice. Kael met his gaze, recognizing the concern. "She's proven helpful before. We need allies if we want to succeed," he replied, keeping his tone steady. Arlen frowned, crossing his arms as he processed this. "I just don't want us to be blindsided again. We've lost too much already." Maya chimed in, nodding in agreement. "We need guarantees if we're going to involve anyone from the syndicate's side." Kael felt the weight of their doubts, but he also sensed their trust in him as a leader. "I'll speak to her personally," he affirmed, determined to ease their concerns. "I understand your fears, but sticking together and adapting is what this mission is all about. Trust takes time, and I plan to prove we're in this together." With the plan taking shape, Kael felt a wave of responsibility wash over him. "I need to ensure that everyone understands the stakes," he said, turning to the team with conviction. He made eye contact with each member, encouraging them to share their thoughts on Rhea and any lingering concerns they might have. "Let's lay out our goals and expectations for her," Kael suggested, setting the tone for the conversation. "If we're bringing her in, we need to be clear about what we need from her." Maya nodded, her focus sharp as she began jotting down points on a notepad, preparing to address how they could secure Rhea's trust while ensuring their own safety. Kael felt a surge of pride watching her work, the solidifying bond of trust within the group, giving him confidence that they would navigate this challenge together. "This is our opportunity to build something stronger," he continued, a sense of hope threading through his words as they moved toward what lay ahead. With the preparations in place, Kael felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's split up and gather our resources," he instructed, watching his team respond with the energy of shared determination. Maya took charge of contacting Rhea, her fingers deftly tapping into her communication device, while Arlen began organizing supplies and equipment for the next phase of their operation. Kael moved to assist, demonstrating his commitment to the team's collective effort, reinforcing the bonds they had forged through their struggles together. As they worked, Kael could see the tension of uncertainty giving way to a sense of mission. Each member focused on their tasks, their movements fluid and confident. The atmosphere thrummed with a mix of urgency and camaraderie, a testament to how far they had all come, ready to face the next challenge head-on. With everyone focused on their roles, Kael stepped back to take stock of their progress, feeling the weight of responsibility firmly on his shoulders. He glanced around the room, observing how each team member worked with renewed purpose, driven by their collective goal. "Let's make sure we have everything before heading out," he called out, honing in on the small details that could make a difference between success and failure. He could see Maya finalizing her communications with Rhea, her expressions shifting from anticipation to resolve as she secured their alliance. Kael's confidence grew, recognizing that the trust they had cultivated was now a powerful tool they could leverage in the upcoming challenge. As they prepared to leave, he gathered them for a quick briefing, solidifying the team's focus and reminding them of the stakes involved, ready to guide them into the next phase of their mission. Chapter 15, The Showdown. As the plan for the sabotage unfolded, Kael felt an electric tension pulse through the air in the warehouse. The team had gathered once more, reviewing every detail as the moment of action drew near. Kael stood at the front, directing attention to the maps spread across the table, their paths highlighted with markers. "This is the moment we've prepared for," he stated, his voice steady as he looked at each member of the team. He outlined the critical steps they would take to execute their plan, emphasizing the importance of timing and coordination. The stakes were higher than ever, and Kael could see the determination reflected in the eyes of his team, their mutual resolve firing up as they embraced the challenge ahead. Kael stepped back, allowing the team to voice their thoughts as they absorbed the plan. Maya raised a hand, a hint of concern in her voice. "What if the traps don't work as we expect? We could expose ourselves instead of achieving our goal." Her words hung in the air, prompting a ripple of uncertainty among the group. Kael recognized the validity of her worries, but also sensed the need to reassure the team. "We can't let fear guide our actions. We've discussed this. If things go sideways, we adapt and improvise." He felt the weight of their eyes on him, and with each passing moment, he realized that being decisive was just as crucial as being prepared. "Trust in our plan, trust in each other. We're in this together," he added, his confidence beginning to inspire renewed determination within the group. Kael felt the tension only partially ease as he addressed the team. "Let's regroup for a moment," he said, sensing the need to clarify their objectives. As they gathered closely around him, he could see the mix of determination and anxiety etched on their faces. "Remember, this mission isn't just about sabotaging the syndicate's operations. It's about sending a message that we won't be pushed around," he asserted, his voice rising with conviction. A murmured agreement arose from the group, but Kael could still feel the underlying apprehension. "No matter what happens, stay focused on our goal and trust each other," he reminded them, reinforcing their bond as a cohesive unit ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the briefing complete, Kael looked at each member of his team, feeling the weight of the mission ahead. He could see how the earlier discussions had forged a stronger bond among them, yet there remained an undercurrent of concern that he needed to address. "Are we all clear on our roles?" he asked, watching as a few team members gave hesitant nods while others whispered to one another. Kael stepped closer to Maya, meeting her gaze and gauging her confidence. "You're ready for this, right?" Her response was immediate, the fire returning to her eyes. "Absolutely. We've got this, Kael." Encouraged by her spirit, he turned back to the group, feeling a sense of pride swell within him as he recognized the transformation they had all undergone together. "Let's make this happen," he said, his tone unwavering, channeling the energy of their collective commitment as they prepared to execute their plan. As the team made their way toward the target location, Kael's mind focused on executing their carefully laid plans while the adrenaline coursed through him. He led the group, moving through the dimly lit streets, the shadows shifting around them as they navigated the thin alleys. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, tension hanging in the air as they settled into their roles, every member aware of the importance of their contributions. "Keep your eyes open for any signs of trouble," Kael called out, his voice steady as they entered a potential danger zone. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from a nearby building, causing everyone to pause, muscles tense as they exchanged wary glances. Kael quickly assessed the situation, aware that adaptability was key. They needed to be ready to alter their plans at a moment's notice if this distraction beckoned danger their way. Kael held up a hand, signaling the team to stop in the shadows, his instincts kicking in as he listened for the source of the noise. The air felt charged, tension brimming as they waited, anticipating the next movement. Another crash echoed, louder this time, sending a jolt through the group. "Let's move," he whispered urgently, feeling the pulse of adrenaline heighten as they prepared to adapt their route. Quickly scanning their surroundings, Kael eyed a narrow path that could lead them behind the commotion and closer to their objective. "Follow my lead and stay alert," he instructed, his voice low but assertive, pushing them forward as they navigated the uncertainty towards their mission's goal. Chapter 16, The Syndicate Meeting. As Kael and the team maneuvered through the dark passages, they stumbled upon a locked gate, frustration surging through them as they realized it was a dead end. The sounds of the chaos from earlier had faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that amplified their uncertainty. Kael examined the gate, assessing the mechanism and feeling the weight of the moment settle in. They had come too far to turn back now. "Let's find another way," he said, determination lacing his voice despite the setback. Maya stepped forward, scanning the area for alternatives, her mind racing as she sought a solution to their predicament. Kael could see the doubt in the eyes of some team members, the panic threatening to seep in. But he forced his resolve to the forefront, knowing they needed to stay focused. Kael quickly began searching the area, hoping to find alternatives that could lead them to their goal. He paced along the walls of the narrow corridor, running his hands over the surface for hidden switches or loose panels, his mind racing with possibilities. Maya, recognizing his urgency, joined him, examining a series of nearby crates stacked against a wall. "Maybe we can find something in here to help us," she suggested, pushing one crate aside and revealing a small toolbox. Kael felt a spark of hope as he rummaged through the toolbox, pulling out a crowbar, a flashlight, and a couple of tools that could aid in their escape. "I can pry the gate open with this," he said, holding up the crowbar, determination igniting within him as they prepared to take action despite the unexpected obstacle. As Kael positioned the crowbar against the gate, Arlen voiced his concerns. "Are you sure that's going to work? What if we just attract more attention?" Kael paused, glancing back at his teammate. "We don't have time to hesitate. We need to act fast before the guards realize we're here." The hesitation in Arlen's voice echoed Kael's own uncertainty, but he pushed it aside, reminding himself of the stakes they faced. Maya stepped closer, her voice steady. "He's right, Kael. We need to balance speed with caution. If we can make sure the coast is clear first." Kael nodded, appreciating her input but feeling the pressure of time pressing against him. "Okay, let's take a quick look before we force it. If we see anyone coming, we'll reevaluate." With that decision, he stepped back, scanning the area for any signs of guards, determined to maintain their stealth while weighing every option. Kael peered around the corner, heart racing as he strained to listen for any approaching sounds. The corridor remained eerily quiet, shadows flickering against the walls as he waited for Rax or anyone else to cross paths with them. "I think it's clear," he murmured, but doubt lingered in his mind as the seconds stretched on. Maya leaned against the wall beside him, her breathing steady, yet the tension between them hovered in the air. "Whatever happens, we stick together," Kael said, needing to reassure both her and himself. She nodded, ready for whatever came next, and Kael felt the weight of responsibility settle on him again as he carefully maneuvered back toward the gate, prepared to act on their plan. With a swift nod to Maya, Kael stepped up to the gate, gripping the crowbar tightly as he prepared to pry it open. He took a deep breath, focused on the sound of distant footsteps echoing through the stronghold, and positioned the tool against the gate's edge. As he forced the crowbar into the cracks, a jarring creak resonated through the air, causing his heart to leap into his throat. "Easy, easy," Maya whispered, glancing nervously back toward the entrance to ensure they weren't being watched. Kael gritted his teeth, pushing harder against the rusted metal, the strain evident in his muscles as he fought against the stubborn lock. Finally, with a sharp snap, the gate gave way, swinging open just wide enough for them to slip through as Kael motioned for the team to follow without hesitation. As they slipped through the gate, Kael's heart raced, the thrill of success mingling with the lingering threat of discovery. He quickly scanned the new area, a narrow hallway filled with low lights and the faint sound of machinery humming in the background. "Stay close," he instructed, leading the team into the shadows as they navigated the unfamiliar space. His mind was sharp, adrenaline sharpening his focus as he recalled the layout they'd studied, plotting their next moves. As they crept forward, the tension of the earlier ambush still weighed heavily on them, serving as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurked. Kael's determination surged. He wouldn't let fear dictate their actions. They were one step closer to their goal, and he was ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 17, The Decision. As Kael led the team deeper into the syndicate stronghold, he could feel a growing tension in the air. After successfully navigating the initial obstacles, the pressure of their mission weighed heavier with each step. Stay focused, he reminded everyone, but he could sense the simmering uncertainty among his teammates. With each doorway they passed, whispers of doubts filled their minds, and some exchanged hesitant glances, unsure of what lay ahead. Maya, keeping pace beside him, spoke up. "Kael, are we really doing the right thing? We've faced so many risks already." Kael turned to her, the seriousness in her voice stirring something deep within him. "We have to move forward. We can't give in to fear now." The resolve in his voice surprised even him, and he felt a surge of determination to solidify their commitment as they faced the unknown. Kael paused at the mouth of a hallway that appeared darker and more foreboding than the rest, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle in the pit of his stomach. He turned to address the team, wanting to confront the unease head-on. "Before we go any further, I need to know we're all in this together," he called out, scanning their faces for signs of resolve. One team member shifted nervously, breaking the silence. "What if this ends badly? We've lost too much already." Kael nodded, acknowledging the fear as it rippled through the group. "I know the risks, but we have each other's backs. We can't turn back now." Maya stepped up, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're right. We need to trust in the plan and each other." Feeling the warmth of her support, Kael straightened, steeling himself for the path ahead, knowing this moment could define their journey. With the team's anxieties laid bare, Kael felt the need to act quickly to dispel the tension. "Let's go over our strategy one more time," he suggested, drawing their attention. He pointed to the map they had pinned on the wall, tracing the route they had plotted through the stronghold. "We're aiming to disable their communications system first. If we can cut them off from each other, we'll have the upper hand." Maya leaned in, her focus unwavering as she picked up on Kael's determination. "And once we're in position, we can also assess any weaknesses in their defenses." Kael glanced at Arlen, whose expression showed lingering doubt but opened up another avenue of discussion. "What happens if we encounter unexpected defenses?" "We'll decide then," Kael replied confidently, emphasizing the importance of adaptability while reassuring the team that they would tackle any surprises together. The air in the room shifted as hard conversations turned into strategic planning, allowing Kael to feel the grip of leadership solidifying within him. As Kael continued the briefing, he could see the fire reigniting in the team's spirit. He emphasized their strengths, giving each member a specific responsibility within the plan. "Maya, you'll handle gaining access to the communication hub. Arlen, you will set up the distractions. You know what to do." There was a spark of excitement in the air, and Kael felt the weight of his role shift from doubt to empowerment. The room buzzed with energy as team members began preparing their gear, voices overlapping in eager discussions about their upcoming roles and strategies. Kael stepped back for a moment, observing them as they laughed and engaged, a sign of trust that had grown among them despite the earlier tensions. He felt a swell of pride for his team's resilience, realizing that their unity and collaboration were the true foundations of their mission's success. As the team finalized their preparations, Kael gathered them together for a final pep talk. "All right, let's remember our goal," he urged, looking each member in the eye, drawing confidence from their determined faces. He could feel the heavy weight of responsibility balanced with a sense of camaraderie, a powerful mix that drove him forward. "We've trained for this, and we each play a vital role. Trust in your instincts and in each other, first and foremost." Nods and murmurs of agreement echoed around the group, their resolve manifesting in a shared energy that filled the room. Kael knew that the trust they had built would be crucial in the days ahead, and he was ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, emboldened by his team's unity and shared commitment. With the plans set and spirits high, Kael felt a surge of adrenaline as they prepared to move out. He glanced around the room, taking in the focused expressions of his teammates, and knew this was their moment to reclaim control. "Let's keep communication open," he reminded them, his authoritative tone cutting through the excitement. "If anything changes, let's adapt together." As they gathered their gear, Kael's mind briefly wandered to the risks ahead, but he quickly shook off the doubts, redirecting his focus. He could hear the rustle of equipment being checked, weapons being loaded, and the quiet murmurs of confidence building within the team. With a nod to each member, Kael stepped towards the door, the anticipation of action propelling him forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 18: The Gathering Storm. As Kael and his team approached the Syndicate's headquarters, a sense of gravity filled the air. He could feel the tension within the group, their silent anticipation palpable as they readied themselves for the confrontation. "Remember, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone they've hurt," Kael reminded the team, his voice steady but powerful, driving home the importance of their mission. The determined expressions on his teammates' faces reflected their commitment, a silent agreement that fortified their resolve. As they navigated the perimeter, Kael took a deep breath, the realization that they were on the brink of change coursing through him. "Let's execute the plan," he said firmly, his heart pounding with both excitement and fear as they prepared to confront the Syndicate and reclaim their futures. Kael led the way into the heavily fortified entrance, each step echoing in the charged air. He glanced back at his team, their eyes filled with unwavering determination. "Stick to the plan," he reminded them, his voice low but filled with conviction as they moved deeper into the stronghold. The layout they had reviewed earlier swirled in his mind, guiding his movements as they approached the heart of the Syndicate's operations. Suddenly, the shadows flared with movement, and Kael instinctively raised his weapon, ready for whatever might come. "Get ready," he shouted, adrenaline surging as the team braced themselves for the imminent conflict, their unity turning anxious anticipation into fierce resolve. As they entered the main room, Kael was hit by the sight of several Syndicate members gathered around a large table, engaged in intense discussion. His heart raced at the unexpected number of adversaries, but he quickly assessed the situation, recognizing the chaos he could exploit. "On my mark," he whispered to Maya and Arlen, their eyes locked in shared understanding as they prepared to launch their attack. Just then, one of the Syndicate members caught a glimpse of Kael's team, and panic erupted in the room. Weapons were drawn, and Kael felt the pulse of adrenaline surge through his body, pushing him into action as he led his team toward the fray. "Now!" he shouted, urging everyone forward as they charged into the confrontation, ready to fight for their cause. Kael fought his way into the crowd of Syndicate members, every instinct honed from past encounters guiding his movements. He swiftly evaded a swing from a nearby enforcer, countering with a sharp blow that connected, sending the attacker staggering. The energy in the room was electric, filled with the shouts of chaos as his teammates engaged with the Syndicate, each blow echoing with the weight of their mission. "Keep pushing," Kael called out, feeling the adrenaline surge as he maneuvered through the fray, coordinating with Maya and Arlen, who were expertly covering their flanks amidst the conflict. His presence inspired the team, and he noticed their movements becoming more fluid and confident, bolstered by his resolve. With every successful strike and every moment of tactical advantage, Kael felt his leadership solidifying, the transformation he had undergone, igniting a fierce determination in himself and his comrades. As the fight raged on, Kael spotted a Syndicate leader attempting to rally his men, their fierce glares matching Kael's intensity. With a surge of determination, he pushed through the chaos, making his way toward the man intent on sowing fear among his crew. "Take him down," he shouted to his team, focused on breaking the enemy's spirit before they could regroup. Maya, hearing Kael's command, maneuvered to create a diversion, firing at nearby support beams to create an explosive distraction that echoed through the room. The noise drew attention away from Kael as he closed in on the leader, ready to confront the man who had orchestrated so much suffering for the city. Fueled by a mixture of anger and purpose, Kael prepared for the showdown, each step bringing him closer to dismantling the Syndicate's hold on their lives. Kael reached the Syndicate leader, their eyes locking in a fierce moment that felt electric against the backdrop of chaos. "Your reign of terror ends here," Kael declared, his voice steady as he raised his weapon, ready for the confrontation that would define this moment. The leader smirked, confidence radiating from him despite the turmoil around them. "You think you can take me down? You're just a pawn in a game you don't understand." Kael's grip tightened on his weapon, feeling the weight of every choice he had made thus far, the lessons learned from loss and victory flooding his mind. "I'm no pawn," he replied, resolve hardening in his chest as he readied himself for the fight ahead. Just as the first blow was about to land, the room erupted once more into noise. Team members rallying around Kael, their faith in him igniting a united front against their enemies. In that moment, Kael knew that every struggle had led him to this point, and he was determined to see it through, not just for himself but for everyone who had fought alongside him. Chapter 19. The chase begins. Kael and his team moved stealthily through the narrow passageways of the stronghold, the adrenaline from the earlier confrontation still coursing through their veins. Every shadow felt alive, each noise amplified as they pressed on, the weight of their mission hanging heavily in the air. He could sense the urgency building among the team, their bodies tense with anticipation as they prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. "Focus up," he reminded them, his voice low as they approached an intersection leading to different sections of the compound. This was the moment where strategy would meet opportunity, and Kael felt the pressure intensify as he considered their next moves. With determination, he glanced at the makeshift map they had drawn earlier, picturing the layout as they prepared to split into two groups to cover more ground. Kael glanced at the team, his mind racing through the different scenarios they could encounter. "Here's the plan," he stated, his voice steady as he laid out their split strategy. "I'll take a group to the communications room," he began, looking specifically at Maya and Arlen, "while the rest of you scout for any remaining enforcers and secure our escape routes. That way, we cover all bases." Maya nodded, a spark of excitement igniting in her eyes as she checked her gear one last time. "Let's move quickly," Arlen added, the urgency in his voice matching the tension in the air. Kael felt the energy in the room shift with their agreement, a shared sense of purpose overcoming the anxieties that had previously lingered. Together, they set off, each step resonating with the determination to take control of the situation and seize the moment that lay ahead. As Kael moved quietly down the corridor toward the communications room, he could hear the distant murmur of voices and the occasional clanking of equipment. His heart raced, but he remained focused, aware that every choice mattered. Suddenly, Maya signaled him to stop, pointing toward a pair of guards ahead, their relaxed demeanor a stark contrast to the tension in Kael's chest. "Do we take them out?" she whispered, glancing between the guards and Kael, her eyes filled with determination. Kael weighed the options, knowing that taking out the guards could draw attention, but understanding it was also essential for their mission. "Let's wait for them to separate," he decided, keenly observing their movements, ready to adapt his plan based on the unfolding situation. The seconds felt like hours as they held their breath, poised at the edge of action, prepared for whatever might come next. Kael watched intently as the guards moved apart, engaging in light-hearted conversation, completely unaware of the danger lurking nearby. "Now," he whispered, signaling for Maya to follow his lead. They sprang into action, each movement calculated. Kael rushed the guard on the left, while Maya flanked the other, their efficiency highlighting the trust they had built over their tumultuous journey. Kael tackled his target to the ground, muffling the guard's surprised shout as he quickly restrained him. Maya dispatched her guard with swift precision, the two of them working in unison to neutralize the threat before it could alert others. Panting, Kael straightened up, checking to ensure the area was clear as he listened for any sounds of alarm, grateful for the quiet that enveloped them. Kael quickly searched the guards for any keys or communication devices, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Finding a set of keys secured to a belt, he pocketed them, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "Let's move before anyone else comes," he urged, glancing at Maya, who was already scanning the area for any further threats. As they made their way down the hall, Kael's adrenaline surged, igniting a renewed focus as he prepared for what lay ahead. Maya caught up to him, eyes glinting with determination, and whispered, "I've got your back, Kael. We're in this together." Her words fueled him, and he realized that the bonds they had forged through adversity only strengthened their resolve as they approached their objective with a mix of urgency and confidence. As they approached the door to the communications room, Kael felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He could see the faint glow of screens through the small window, the hum of machinery promising vital intel. "Get ready," he whispered, positioning himself beside the door. Maya nodded, her expression focused as she prepped her gear, aware of the significance this moment held for their mission. Kael turned the key he had taken from the guard, heart racing as he heard the lock click open. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open slowly, the room filled with the sound of beeping monitors and the chatter of syndicate members, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Chapter 20. The Dark Hallways. Inside the communications room, Kael took a moment to catch his breath, feeling the adrenaline from the recent confrontation slowly ebb away. He swiftly moved to the main console, assessing the various screens and devices that flickered with data. Kael's heart raced as he began to take stock of their progress, mentally marking off the objectives they had accomplished and evaluating what still needed to be done. He noted the operational details being transmitted and the layout of the syndicate's network, a treasure trove of information that could be pivotal in their ongoing fight. This success, however, was overshadowed by the pressing challenges that remained. They were far from finished. "Let's make this count," he murmured, rallying his thoughts as he focused on the task at hand, ready to transform their gains into actionable steps against the syndicate. Kael meticulously reviewed the documents they had secured, flipping through pages filled with critical information about the syndicate's operations. He paused at a section that detailed supply routes, his mind racing as he envisioned how they could use this intel to their advantage. "Guys, look at this," he called to Maya and Arlen, pointing to the map that marked key transport points. "This is where we can hit them the hardest. If we disrupt their supplies here and here, we can weaken their grip on the city." Maya leaned in closer, her eyes scanning the lines marked on the map. "We'll need to coordinate with our informants to time this perfectly or risk a counterattack." Kael nodded, aware of the stakes at hand. This newfound clarity reshaped their plans, reminding him that the path to victory required careful strategy and determination. As the discussion progressed, Kael noticed a mix of excitement and skepticism among his teammates. Arlen raised a hand, his brow furrowed, clearly unsure. What if they shift their routes unexpectedly? We could end up walking into a trap. Kael felt the tension rise but pushed through, recognizing the validity in Arlen's concerns. "That's a risk we have to assess. We'll monitor for changes and adjust our timing accordingly." Maya chimed in, her voice steady. "We can set up surveillance near the transport points to gather real-time intel, allowing us to be more adaptable." Kael absorbed their input, feeling the weight of each perspective as he led the conversation. "Exactly. We adapt to whatever comes our way," he asserted, his confidence rising as the group began to strategize in earnest, their collaborative efforts bringing the mission into sharper focus. Kael could sense the uncertainty lingering in the atmosphere as discussions continued, the gravity of their plan weighing heavily on everyone. He gathered his thoughts, recalling the importance of their mission and the resilience they had developed as a team. "Listen, I know these risks are daunting," he began, making eye contact with each team member, ensuring they felt his sincerity. "We've faced adversity before and come out stronger. We've learned to adapt. And that's what we'll do again." Arlen nodded slowly, but Kael could see the lingering doubt in his eyes. "Let's ensure we're ready for any surprises. Our preparations will set us apart this time," Kael reinforced, trying to instill confidence as they moved forward, acknowledging how his personal journey had shaped his approach to leadership. Kael looked around at his team, noticing the transformation in their attitudes as they absorbed his words. "Let's break into groups," he suggested, dividing the tasks according to each member's strengths and expertise. "Maya and Arlen, you two will scout the transport routes. Make sure to gather intel on any syndicate movements you see." He turned to another team member, pointing decisively. "You'll handle the tech setup near the ambush points, ensuring we have eyes on everything." As the team members broke off to prepare, Kael felt a deep sense of pride swell within him. Their collaboration and trust were palpable, a reflection of his growth as a leader. "Stay in contact," he reminded them, his voice firm as they dispersed, aware that their success depended on how well they could work together in the face of the unknown. With renewed determination, Kael readied himself for the task ahead, knowing that they were stronger together and prepared to adapt to whatever challenges awaited them. As the team split to execute their roles, Kael felt a surge of purpose push him forward. He moved toward a small computer terminal, intent on accessing real-time data about the syndicate's operations. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up maps and schedules that would guide their next steps. The information flowed steadily, but just as he was about to finalize his findings, a sudden flicker on the screen caught his attention. "Not now," he muttered under his breath, frustration creeping in as the system began to lag. Kael quickly recalibrated, relying on the skills he had honed in earlier encounters, ready to adapt and find a solution to any setbacks. Chapter 21, The Decision. As Kael prepared for the next phase of their mission, he felt the weight of uncertainty settle in, a reminder that risks were inherent in every decision. Amidst the frantic energy of the team, an unexpected message came through on the communication device, an offer from an insider who had knowledge of the syndicate's plans. "Kael, you need to see this," Maya said, her voice urgent as she handed him the device. He read the message with growing interest, weighing the potential benefits against the dangers of trusting someone within enemy lines. The temptation to turn back and gather more intel loomed large, but he pushed it aside, knowing that they had come too far to back down now. "Let's move," Kael asserted, ready to capitalize on the opportunity even as the possibility of danger lurked in the corners of his mind. Kael led the team as they moved cautiously toward the meeting point the insider had provided. Each step was filled with an undercurrent of tension, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. He felt the adrenaline coursing through him, aware that every decision mattered, and their timing would be crucial. "Remember, if this goes sideways, we have to stick to our exit strategy," he reminded the group, his voice firm as they navigated through dimly lit corridors. As they approached the designated location, a flicker of doubt crept in. Kael glanced back at Maya, seeking reassurance in her determined expression. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, aware of the stakes they faced as they prepared to engage with a potential ally and a very real threat. As they arrived at the meeting point, Kael's senses heightened, picking up every sound and movement around them. The designated spot was a secluded corner within the stronghold, shrouded in shadows, perfect for a discreet conversation. Suddenly, two figures approached, one tall and imposing, the other smaller and more agile, confirming Kael's worst fears about the insider. "What's the deal?" the larger figure demanded, a sharp gaze scanning Kael and his team critically. "Easy. We're here for intel, not a fight," Kael replied, keeping his tone steady, but inside he felt the tension surge. He noticed Maya glancing at him, concern flickering in her eyes, as Arlen stayed alert, ready for any sudden movements, the uncertainty hanging thick in the air as they waited. Kael took a step forward, meeting the larger figure's intense gaze with unwavering determination. "We're here for information on the syndicate's operations," he stated, his voice calm but firm as urgency hung in the air. The smaller figure exchanged a glance with the larger one. "And why should we trust you?" they asked, skepticism etched on their face. "Because that's our goal too," Kael replied, feeling a surge of confidence as he explained their mutual interests. "We want to take them down, and the intel you have is crucial for that. In return, we can offer protection and support against any repercussions." The larger figure considered Kael's words, the flicker of intrigue breaking through their stoic expression. Maya shifted slightly, sensing the tension but ready to back Kael up, her posture reflecting both caution and support as the dynamics of the encounter unfolded. The larger figure shifted their stance, a sign of contemplation as they weighed Kael's proposal. "Information comes at a price," they finally said, their tone still guarded but less confrontational than before. Kael felt a rush of hope, sensing a crack in the resistance as he pressed on. "Name your price. We're willing to negotiate." Maya exchanged a glance with Kael, a faint encouragement in her eyes as the atmosphere began to thaw. The smaller figure smirked, sensing an opportunity, and leaned in closer. "We need a distraction during our next shipment. Help us with that, and you'll have what you need." Kael's mind raced, considering the implications of such a plan, but also recognizing their strategic advantage. "Deal," he replied firmly, feeling the weight of the alliance begin to shift in their favor as they moved towards a common goal. With the agreement in place, Kael felt a rush of adrenaline as he stepped back, ready to solidify their plan. "Let's discuss the details of the distraction," he suggested, eager to carve out a path that could maximize their chances of success. The larger figure nodded, gesturing for them to sit at a nearby table, and brought up a digital map of the syndicate's operation zones. Kael leaned in, tracing the routes they needed to exploit while mapping out potential areas of conflict. Maya and Arlen joined him, their expressions a mix of determination and strategy, as they began to brainstorm how best to execute the distraction while remaining undetected. This collaboration highlighted the growing trust between them and the new allies, allowing Kael to feel more confident in their ability to navigate the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 22: A New Dawn. As Kael and his team executed the distraction, the plan began to unravel in ways he hadn't anticipated. They had set explosives at strategic points, and as the first blast erupted, it sent shock waves through the syndicate's compound, drawing guards toward the chaos. But instead of the expected confusion, Kael noticed a well-organized response from the syndicate, their forces mobilizing more efficiently than he had calculated. "Get ready," he shouted to the team, recognizing the gravity of their situation as they prepared to engage with the enforcers now rushing toward them. "Fall back," he ordered, feeling the tension mount as he quickly adjusted their next course of action. This failure to anticipate the syndicate's reaction struck hard, but Kael pushed forward, determined to salvage what they could amidst the escalating conflict. Kael quickly reassessed their surroundings, adrenaline coursing through him as he sought a way to minimize the damage from the unfolding chaos. "Arlen, cover the back entrance. Maya with me," he instructed, his authoritative tone guiding their movements as they tried to escape the surge of enforcers. The team split, Kael and Maya darting toward a side corridor in an effort to evade the guards converging on their position. As they moved, Kael could hear voices calling for reinforcements, each shout echoing the urgency of their situation. "Trust your instincts," he urged Maya, pushing deeper into the shadows, aware that every decision counted. Kael focused on leading them through the maze-like hallways, determined to make it to safety while regrouping and reassessing their strategy. As Kael and Maya maneuvered down the corridor, they encountered a locked door blocking their escape route. Kael quickly assessed the situation, frustration bubbling as he struggled with the handle, knowing time was running out. "Just force it open," Maya urged, her voice a mix of urgency and determination, scanning for signs of pursuing guards. Kael gritted his teeth, feeling the pressure mounting as he shifted gears. "No, we need to be smart. Let's find another way." In that instant, he remembered the blueprint they had studied earlier, recalling a maintenance access nearby that could lead them out. "Follow me," he commanded, taking a sharp turn and flinging open another door, determined to lead them to safety, despite the chaos behind them. Kael led Maya through the maintenance access, ducking low as they navigated the dimly lit passage. The sounds of chaos faded, replaced by the faint hum of machinery, and he could feel the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. They reached a junction, and Kael quickly surveyed their options, recognizing that their escape route needed to be calculated meticulously. "Let's move toward the loading bay," he whispered, remembering the intel about potential weak spots they could exploit. Maya nodded, her eyes darting around, alert for any sign of danger that could emerge from the shadows. Kael felt a mixture of hope and determination as they advanced, knowing that every decision made now would either propel them forward or lead to further complications down the line. As they approached the loading bay, Kael's heart raced with the thrill of possibility mingled with a lingering fear of what awaited them. He could hear faint voices seeping through the walls, a reminder that they were still deep in enemy territory and that danger could be just around the corner. Keep quiet, he murmured, gesturing for Maya to stay close as they crept forward, senses heightened in anticipation. Kael's mind raced with thoughts of how many times they had faced such daunting risks before, every challenge sharpening his instincts and resolve. He felt a rush of determination, knowing that their success hinged on executing the plans they had forged together. With one last glance back at Maya, he took a deep breath, ready to push through any obstacles that stood in their way, confident in their unity and shared purpose. As they entered the loading bay, Kael's eyes darted around, taking in the numerous crates and stacks of supplies. He felt the pulse of excitement, knowing this area was crucial for their plan, but the weight of caution lingered heavily in his mind. "Let's split up and cover more ground," Kael suggested, quickly assigning each member a specific task to maximize their efficiency. Maya moved towards a stack of crates, determined to find anything that could aid their mission, her focus unwavering. Kael noticed Arlen hesitating, glancing around warily, and could sense the apprehension building. "What's holding you back?" he asked, wanting to address any lingering doubts. "I just want to make sure we're not walking into a trap," Arlen replied, his voice tinged with concern. Kael nodded, understanding the fear but also recognizing the importance of moving forward. "We'll be careful. Trust our instincts and each other." With a firm nod, Kael turned back to the crates, searching for anything they could use while feeling the weight of their mission pressing down, determined to ensure their success despite the uncertainties they faced. Chapter 23, The Negotiation. Kael stood at the designated meeting point, his heart racing with anticipation as he waited for their contact to arrive. The dim alley was alive with the sounds of the city, but he remained focused, determined to make the most of this opportunity. He glanced at the clock on his wrist, feeling the minutes tick by, each moment amplifying his anxiety about what could go wrong. The quiet was unsettling, the anticipation hanging thick in the air as he considered the stakes of their negotiations. Just then, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, Rhea, her expression cautious yet determined as she approached. "Hope you've got something worthwhile to discuss," she said, crossing her arms and surveying him with a critical eye. Kael stepped forward, the tension palpable as he prepared to lay out the stakes for their meeting. "We need to talk about the syndicate and what they're planning," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the weight of his message. Rhea's eyes narrowed. Skepticism etched on her face as she considered his words. "And why should I help you? Last I heard, you were flying solo." Kael felt a flicker of irritation but quickly reined it in. "Because if we don't act together, we'll both face the consequences. I have intel that could change everything." He pulled out the documents they had retrieved, laying them on a nearby crate, emphasizing the urgency of their situation. Rhea leaned closer, examining the papers, the curiosity replacing her initial suspicion as she began to see the potential benefits of collaboration. As Rhea scanned the documents, her expression shifted, realization dawning as she grasped the implications of the intel. "All right, I'll listen," she conceded, leaning against the crate for support, her tone softer but filled with skepticism. "But you're going to have to trust me. If the syndicate finds out I'm involved with you..." Kael nodded, understanding the gravity of her concern. "I get it, but we need to be strategic, or we won't stand a chance. This is bigger than us." He could sense the tension in the air shift as she considered the proposed alliance, the stakes clear and tangible. "Fine," Rhea replied, crossing her arms. "What's the plan?" Kael felt a surge of hope. This moment felt critical, one step closer to their goal with potential allies forging from the ashes of past mistrust. Kael laid out his plan, detailing how they could leverage the newfound intel to strike at the syndicate's supply lines while ensuring Rhea's safety. He emphasized their need for a diversion, a calculated risk that would allow them to disrupt the syndicate's operations without directly confronting their enforcers. Rhea listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions about Kael's strategy and the dynamics of the syndicate's movements. "Are you sure you want to risk this? If we don't time it right, it could blow up in our faces," she warned, her skepticism resurfacing as she weighed the potential consequences. Kael met her gaze, unyielding. "We won't know until we try, and I believe we can execute this together. You know how they operate. Your insight is invaluable." Her expression softened slightly, and he could see the wheels turning in her mind, contemplating the opportunity that lay before them. As Kael and Rhea finalized the details, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, each member's breathing steady and focused. Kael felt a surge of confidence, knowing that their strategic discussions had forged a new alliance that could shift the balance against the syndicate. Rhea leaned over the map, her finger tracing the routes they planned to sabotage. "If we coordinate the distraction here, we'll have enough time to hit their supply line before they can react." Kael nodded, impressed by her strategic mind. "Exactly. And if we can draw enough attention, we'll disrupt their operations significantly." A team member, eager and wide-eyed, piped up, "I can help set up the distractions. Just give me the signal, and I'll make it happen." Kael smirked at the enthusiasm. It felt good to see the team more engaged and inspired by their mission. With the plan in place, Kael felt a renewed sense of purpose as they prepared to move into action. He gathered everyone once more, ensuring that all were clear on their roles and responsibilities, the energy in the room crackling with anticipation. "Remember, adaptability is key. If something changes, we adjust and make the best of it," he reminded them, his confidence reinforced by their collective resolve. As they finalized their preparations, Rhea joined in, offering additional insights on the syndicate's movements that could help them optimize their approach. The team members exchanged nods, their trust in Kael solidified as they recognized his commitment to the mission. In that moment, Kael understood that they were not just fighting a battle. They were paving the way for a future where they could reclaim their city and their lives from the syndicate's grip. Chapter 24, The Shadowy Descent. Kael stood at the edge of their makeshift command center, the weight of decisions heavy on his shoulders as he reflected on their next course of action. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the remnants of their recent discussions and the unshakable anticipation of the impending confrontation. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, recalling their objectives and the sacrifices already made, aware that this mission could alter the course for whatever lay ahead. After a moment's pause, he turned to the team, resolve burning in his gut. "We need to disrupt their operations now, while they're vulnerable." The room fell silent as they absorbed his words, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to an energized determination. Kael felt a rush of confidence, knowing that this decisive moment would not only steer their mission, but also define the path of their future as they fought back against the syndicate. Kael outlined the details of their next steps, breaking down the strategy into manageable parts that each member could execute efficiently. "Arlen, you'll lead the distraction team to draw the guards away from the supply routes. Make sure it's noisy enough to grab their attention, but don't get caught," he instructed, locking eyes with Arlen to underline the seriousness of the task. Maya nodded, her expression one of focused determination, as she prepared to provide intel and cover from a vantage point. Kael moved from person to person, distributing tasks and ensuring everyone understood their roles as they prepped to leave. "Remember, if anything changes, communicate immediately. We need to adapt on the fly," he reminded them, instilling a sense of urgency and collaboration in the group. The team members exchanged glances filled with resolve, eager to prove themselves and a solid trust forming as they prepared to take action against the syndicate. As the team finalized their preparations, Kael felt the tension in the air begin to crackle with anticipation. He turned to Maya, who was checking her gear for the umpteenth time, her brow furrowed with concentration. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, wanting to ensure she was as prepared as she could be for the task ahead. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steady but carrying a hint of nervous energy. "We've got this, but I just want to ensure we don't miss the timing." Kael nodded, appreciating her attention to detail. He knew her instincts would be crucial, and her commitment to the plan echoed his own resolve. "Just remember to stay in communication, no matter what happens," he reminded her, recognizing how the trust they had built made all the difference. With a final check of their gear, the team members exchanged determined glances, ready to take on the challenges that awaited them. Kael took a moment to absorb the gravity of the mission, considering the sacrifices that had led them to this point. He reminded himself that their success depended not just on individual initiative, but on the strength of their teamwork and collective resolve. "Let's move," he said, shifting into action as he led the way outside, the cool night air filling his lungs and sharpening his senses. Each step felt heavy with purpose, and he could see the determination in his team's eyes, spurring him onward. As they navigated toward their target, Kael caught a glimpse of familiar faces in the crowd, allies who had also suffered under the syndicate's rule, fueling his desire to dismantle their operations. This mission was more than just a tactical strike. It was a chance to reclaim control, to show the syndicate that they would no longer be victims of fear. As they approached the designated location, Kael felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with apprehension. He glanced back at his team, determination written across their faces, sensing their commitment to the mission. "Now is the time to trust one another," he reminded them, his tone steady, instilling confidence as they entered the high-stakes environment of the syndicate's stronghold. A sharp noise echoed through the air, causing everyone to instinctively tense, but Kael quickly raised a hand. "Stay focused. We're almost there." He could sense the energy around him shifting, the anticipation driving them forward as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. With each step, he drew strength from the collective resolve of his team, ready to seize their moment of reckoning. As they neared the entrance to the syndicate's operations center, Kael positioned himself at the front, the weight of leadership resting heavily on his shoulders. He took a deep breath, absorbing the energy of his teammates, who clustered closely behind him, ready to spring into action. "Stick to the plan and stay sharp," he urged, feeling the adrenaline start to course through him as their moment drew closer. With a silent nod from the team, Kael pushed through the door, stepping into a room filled with hustle and bustle, enforcers moving with purpose. He quickly assessed the layout, scanning for critical points of entry and their objectives, the thrill of the mission igniting his focus. In that moment, he understood that his journey had led him to this juncture, one where every lesson learned would come to bear as they faced the formidable syndicate together. Chapter 25, Back to the Leader. As the dust settled from the skirmish, Kael convened the team in the command center to evaluate their next steps. The atmosphere was charged, a blend of exhaustion and adrenaline lingering in the air, and Kael felt the urgency to regroup quickly. "Let's take stock of what we accomplished and what we lost," he said, laying out the maps again on the table, his finger tracing their paths through the stronghold. Each member of the team began to voice their observations, sharing insights from their roles during the confrontation, exchanging ideas about the next phase of the mission. Kael felt a sense of purpose wash over him as he listened to their discussions, appreciating how their collaboration breathed new life into their objectives. "Now, we adjust our strategy based on what we've learned," he added, feeling a palpable shift in energy as they focused once more on the challenges that lay ahead. Kael's eyes scanned the documents they had gathered, each piece of intel holding potential for disrupting the syndicate's operations even further. He noted the gaps in their strategy and the lessons learned from their earlier setbacks, deciding to challenge the team to evaluate their approach. "After our last encounter, we need to be smarter about how we execute our next move," he stated, a firm resolve shaping his voice. Maya leaned forward, her brow furrowed as she ran her hands over the variable outcomes they had discussed earlier. "We need to ensure we're not just reacting, but anticipating their next steps," she suggested, her insight grounding the conversation with practicality. Kael nodded, grateful for her perspective. "Exactly. We'll establish a surveillance plan to keep us informed of their movements and be ready to adapt." As Kael continued to outline the new strategy, he sensed a mix of excitement and apprehension settling over the group. "Let's prepare for the next big push," he said, emphasizing the necessity of action and ensuring they understood the importance of sticking together. Arlen shifted in his seat, a hint of skepticism in his eyes. "And what if we run into those guards again? We can't afford another ambush." Kael responded with confidence. "That's exactly why we adapt. We'll gather more intel before we act. We have to be ahead of them." Maya chimed in, adding, "If we have eyes on their movements, we can use that information to create diversions, just like we discussed." Kael nodded, recognizing the value of their collaboration as they built on each other's ideas, feeling the budding solidarity among them strengthen. Determined to learn from their past, he looked around the room, resolving to anchor their plans in the lessons they had embraced together. Kael felt the weight of his team's expectations as he continued to guide their conversation. "Okay, we all know we have to be tactical," he stated, looking each team member in the eye to emphasize the importance of a united front. He observed Maya engrossed in her notes, her enthusiasm palpable as she began outlining additional routes and contingency plans. "By keeping our options open, we can stretch their resources thin," she proposed, clearly motivated by the group's renewed focus. Kael couldn't help but smile at how their collaboration was enriching the strategy, the synergy between them palpable as they built on each other's ideas. "Exactly," he agreed, feeling a surge of energy flow through the team as they considered all the tactics available to them. This collective brainstorming not only reaffirmed their commitment, but also solidified Kael's confidence in their ability to face whatever challenges were coming next. With the plan taking shape and energy building, Kael sensed an undeniable shift in the room, a blend of hope and focus, ready to tackle the impending challenges. "Let's gather the necessary supplies and distribute the roles based on our discussions," he instructed, quickly moving into action. The team sprang into motion, each member taking ownership of their tasks with newfound enthusiasm. Maya coordinated with Arlen to arrange equipment, while others checked their weapons, ensuring everything was in top condition. Kael moved among them, offering encouragement and input, demonstrating his growth as a leader who valued each member's contribution. "This time, we execute with precision. Every detail counts," he reminded them, a deep sense of confidence filling him as he watched the group work in unison toward their common goal. As the team finished gathering their supplies, Kael felt a sense of accomplishment swell within him, charging the air with anticipation. "Let's do a final check," he said, his voice steady as he brought the group together once more, the weight of their mission palpable. He moved from person to person, ensuring each member felt prepared and confident in their role. "Arlen, you feel good about setting those distractions?" "We need them to be impactful," Kael said, gauging his teammates' readiness. "I've got it handled," Arlen replied, determination shining in his eyes, his previous doubts now replaced with confidence. Kael could see the transformation in his team, the bonds forged through their experiences shaping their readiness to face the fight ahead. "Let's head out, together," he declared, leading the way with renewed confidence, ready to take the fight to the syndicate. Chapter 26, The Rescue. As Kael and his team prepared to execute their distraction plan, tension filled the air, each member acutely aware of the stakes involved. They moved cautiously behind the cover of stacked crates, finalizing their positions as they reviewed the last-minute details. Kael felt a mix of excitement and apprehension wash over him. This was the moment they had worked toward, but uncertainty lingered like a shadow. "Remember, as soon as the distraction starts, we move in," he reminded the team, his voice steady but firm. Maya adjusted her gear, eyes focused and ready. "We have to be quick, if this doesn't go as planned." "Then we adapt," Kael interjected, emphasizing their mantra. He could see determination in their eyes, and with a nod, they braced themselves for the impending chaos, ready to put their plan into action. The moment arrived as Kael signaled for the diversion to start, a series of carefully placed explosives detonating with a resounding boom that shook the ground beneath them. Flashes of light illuminated the stronghold, casting frantic shadows as the syndicate enforcers scrambled to respond to the unexpected chaos. Kael's heart raced as he gestured for the team to move, adrenaline surging with each step towards the heart of the operation. They dashed across the open space, newfound certainty guiding their movements as they capitalized on the confusion created by their planned disruption. "Stay together," he called out, his voice cutting through the tumult as they maneuvered into a secure location within the compound. Kael could feel the energy shift, the initial fear replaced by exhilaration as they advanced, confident in the knowledge that their strategy was working. As they moved deeper into the stronghold, Kael felt a wave of determination wash over him, pushing aside any lingering doubts. "Quickly, we need to secure the intel," he urged, leading the way to the main operations room, and his team followed closely, their eyes scanning for any lingering threats. Suddenly, a shout erupted from behind them as a group of enforcers regrouped, emerging from the smoke to block their path. Kael felt the tension surge as panic threatened to creep in, but he steadied himself, ready to adapt. "Split up and flank them," he commanded, instincts kicking in as they repositioned to confront the new threat head-on. Maya nodded, moving fluidly as she prepared to take aim, demonstrating the trust they had built through their past struggles and the strength of their unity. Kael felt the adrenaline spike as he fought alongside his team, their movements synchronized as they confronted the enforcers. He ducked to avoid a swing, countering with a sharp strike that sent an enemy stumbling back. Chaos reigned around them, but Kael's focus remained sharp as he called out instructions, directing the team's efforts like a conductor leading an orchestra. Maya flanked to his right, her shots precise as she covered him, each burst of gunfire providing the necessary support to keep the enemies at bay. In the heat of battle, Kael sensed the trust and camaraderie solidify among them, each member working toward a common goal. Their shared purpose energized him, reinforcing his commitment to lead them through this fight and beyond, knowing that what they fought for was worth every ounce of effort. As the clash intensified, Kael noticed a member of the syndicate struggling to regain composure, a glimpse of fear crossing their face. Without hesitation, he seized the moment, recognizing that fear could be just as powerful a weapon as any gun. "Enough!" Kael shouted, his voice booming across the chaos, momentarily drawing attention away from the fight. The surprised enforcers paused, uncertainty flickering in their eyes as Kael stepped forward. Weapon lowered, but stance determined. "I don't want to do this," he declared, his voice steady, resonating with the weight of their shared struggles. This unexpected approach shifted the dynamics of the confrontation. Some enforcers exchanged glances, their resolve wavering as Kael's words hung in the air, challenging everything they believed about their mission. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension as Kael stood firmly, his gaze locked onto the enforcers. Some hardened faces began to soften, the unexpected conflict opening a door to hesitation. "Maya, Arlen, hold your fire," Kael commanded, sensing that the tide of battle could turn with the right approach. Maya lowered her weapon, invisible surprise flickering across her features as she registered Kael's shift in tactics. Kael continued, his voice steady and unwavering. "We can end this without more bloodshed. Join us if you want a chance at a real future." As he spoke, he felt the weight of his words resonate, each syllable grounded in the emotional journey that had brought him here, reflecting his internal growth and understanding of what true leadership meant. Chapter 27, The Shadowy Descent. With the syndicate stronghold compromised, Kael gathered his team in a safe house to reorient and prepare for their next move. He spread out the maps and intel they had secured, anxious to keep the momentum going while assessing their available resources. "Here's what we need to do next," he began, his voice firm as he pointed to the locations marked for potential sabotage. The team leaned in closer, eyes wide with anticipation as Kael outlined their objectives, emphasizing the importance of precision and timing. Maya interjected with ideas on how to leverage the information they had obtained, her enthusiasm sparking a renewed energy within the group. Feeling the weight of their collective resolve, Kael recognized how each member's insights were essential in crafting a dynamic plan, setting the stage for their next steps. Kael engaged the team in brainstorming various methods to execute their plan, each member contributing their unique insights and experiences. "Let's prioritize the weakest points in their defenses," he suggested, tapping on the map to highlight specific areas where they could strike efficiently. Arlen chimed in, pointing to a section that could serve as a perfect entry point during the next shipment. "We can use the noise from the transport vehicles as cover for our approach," he proposed, his confidence evident as the team responded positively to the idea. Kael felt the dynamics shifting, the earlier tension giving way to collaborative energy as they built upon each other's suggestions, reinforcing their bond. The dialogue flowed naturally, and Kael appreciated how far they had come. Their interactions were now marked by trust and shared purpose, bolstering his confidence in their mission. As the team dived deeper into planning, Kael felt a sense of urgency ripple through the group. "Okay, we're running out of time," he said, glancing at the clock on the wall. "We need to finalize our roles and execute this without any delays." Maya took charge of coordinating their communications, ensuring everyone was on the same page as she organized how they would relay information during the operation. However, some team members expressed skepticism about whether their plan would hold up against the syndicate's defenses. "Are we really ready for this? What if things go south again?" one of them questioned, anxiety reflected in their eyes. Kael recognized the fears surfacing and acknowledged them openly. "If we stick to the plan and adapt as we go, we can make this work," he reassured them, feeling the weight of his leadership grow as he addressed their concerns. Kael encouraged everyone to share their final thoughts and concerns, understanding the value of addressing any lingering doubts before they moved forward. "Let's harness the energy we've built here," he said, urging them to channel their nervousness into focus. He glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of each team member, noting their determination and commitment to the mission. "This is our chance to make a real difference," he continued, reinforcing the sense of purpose that resonated among them. As the group began to finalize preparations, Kael felt the collective strength of their resolve, a powerful reminder of how far they had come together. With a sense of unity enveloping them, he made eye contact with Maya, who offered an encouraging smile and nodded, knowing they were ready to take on the challenge ahead. Kael felt a surge of excitement and urgency as they prepared to execute the operation. He moved among the team, checking their gear and ensuring everyone was equipped with the tools they needed. "Remember, timing is everything," he reminded them, his voice firm as he emphasized the importance of coordination. Maya adjusted her equipment and gave Kael a nod, her determination shining through as she prepared for her role in the operation. "I'll be ready to provide intel and updates as we move," she assured him, reinforcing their trust in one another. Kael smiled, grateful for her commitment. He knew that their shared belief in the plan would help them rise to the challenge ahead, and he was ready to lead them through whatever came next. As the team finalized their preparations, Kael looked around the room, feeling the energy shift to a palpable focus. "Let's go over the plan one last time," he said, gathering their attention as they circled around him. He rehashed the critical elements, detailing each member's role and the timing they needed to execute perfectly. The anticipation in the room grew as team members began mentally rehearsing their parts, glancing at each other with determination. Kael could sense the trust building among them, reinforced by previous successes and struggles they had shared. With one final nod, he declared, "We're ready. Let's take our city back," his voice steady, embodying the leadership he had grown into as they prepared to face the syndicate head-on. Chapter 28, The Final Confrontation. Kael and his team moved in sync, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they approached the syndicate's stronghold. The air was thick with anticipation, each member acutely aware of the stakes as they prepared for the encounter that could change everything. "Stay sharp," Kael reminded them, his voice steady, embodying the resolve they all felt as they neared their target. The layout of the stronghold loomed before them, dimly lit but teeming with life, the sounds of activity hinting at the syndicate's confidence. Kael felt a rush of determination. They were ready to take action after all their preparation and sacrifices. "Let's make this count," he urged, the gravity of their mission settling in as they prepared to engage once more in the fight for their future. Kael led the way into the chaotic operations room, the intensity of his team's purpose igniting as they burst through the door. The room was a whirlwind of activity. Syndicate members scrambled to respond to the unexpected breach, their shouts echoing against the walls. "Move. Take control," Kael commanded, instinctively directing his team to secure the area and disarm the enforcers who were quick to draw weapons. Maya took position near the entrance, her shots precise as she suppressed any approaching threats, while Arlen flanked Kael, backing him up as they pushed deeper into the room. Kael felt the thrill of action surge within him as he navigated through the chaos, each movement underlined by the countless hours of planning that had led them to this moment. "Let's hit their communication hub," he shouted, driving his team forward with determination as they fought to gain the upper hand amid the turmoil. Kael's eyes locked onto the main terminal, recognizing it as the key to crippling the syndicate's operations. He navigated through the escalating chaos, dodging bursts of gunfire and calls for backup, his focus unwavering as he moved strategically. Maya provided cover, her shots ringing out with precision as she kept the guards occupied, while Arlen cleared a path, pushing back against the overwhelming forces. Kael finally reached the console, his heart racing as he began typing rapidly, pulling up crucial data and navigating through layers of security. "Kael, watch out!" Maya shouted, urgency punctuating her voice as a guard spotted him and charged, weapon raised. Without looking away from the screen, Kael instinctively ducked, feeling the rush of air as a bullet whizzed past, determination locking him in the moment as he fought to maintain focus on the mission. Kael felt a surge of adrenaline as he regained his footing, his hands continuing to fly over the terminals, searching for vital intelligence. Come on," he muttered to himself, feeling the pressure mount as the guard he had evaded fought to regain focus amid the chaos. Maya continued to fire at approaching enforcers, her aim steady, but Kael could sense the impending tide of reinforcements drawing closer. "Almost there," he called out, urgency edging his tone as he attempted to bypass the last layer of security. Just as he felt the data begin to download, the door burst open, and more guards poured into the room, shouts of alarm ringing out. "Kael, we need to move," Maya shouted, her determination echoing the urgency of their situation as they prepared to respond to the escalating conflict that surrounded them. Kael felt the weight of urgency as the download completed, the vital intel now secured. "Got it," he yelled, relief flooding him for just a moment before he processed the incoming threat. Maya instantly reacted, firing at the approaching guards to create a temporary barrier, while Arlen moved to cover Kael's escape route. "Let's regroup," Kael shouted, swiftly leading the team toward a side exit as the guards began to return fire. They moved as one, instinctively knowing where to go, their training taking over in the chaos of the moment. Kael glanced back, seeing the verification of their success in the faces of his team, pushing him onward as they raced to escape the stronghold before being overwhelmed. As they burst through the side exit into the night air, Kael inhaled deeply, the adrenaline still surging through him. He quickly regrouped the team, ensuring everyone was accounted for, scanning their faces for signs of distress or fatigue. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his concern evident, relieved to see nods of affirmation in return. Maya brushed dust from her jacket, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. "We did it. We actually did it." The sense of victory was palpable, energizing the team as they caught their breath and processed the success of their mission. Kael felt a newfound sense of responsibility. The lessons learned were vital, shaping not just their actions, but his evolution as a leader in a world still fraught with danger. Chapter 29, Confronting the Past. As the dust settled from their confrontation with the syndicate, Kael stood amidst the remnants of the battle, feeling the weight of their victory and loss. The room was in ruins, bits of debris scattered everywhere, along with the signs of chaos that had erupted during the fight. He took a moment to catch his breath, the adrenaline slowly fading as reality sunk in. They had disrupted the syndicate's hold, but at a significant cost. "Check on everyone," he called out to the team, core responsibilities kicking in as he focused on support before self. Each member nodded, moving around the space to assess injuries and ensure their comrades were still standing. Kael's heart sank as he counted heads, the absence of one teammate weighing heavily on him, a stark reminder of the risks they had faced. Kael moved quickly, ensuring the team members were accounted for, each face revealing a mix of relief and lingering tension. "I'm fine," Maya said, brushing off her injuries as she checked on Arlen, who was nursing a bruised shoulder. "Just a scratch," he replied, trying to minimize the concern, but the fatigue in his eyes betrayed him. Kael felt a surge of frustration at their losses, but focused on the tangible successes as he gathered the remaining intel from the destroyed terminals. "Let's regroup and assess our next steps," he suggested, pulling the team together to discuss how to capitalize on their victory despite the setbacks. Determination ignited within him. They had made significant progress, and he refused to let the absence of one ally overshadow their achievements. As Kael gathered the team, the air was thick with a blend of excitement and uncertainty. "Now that we have the intel, let's go over what we can do with it," he began, his voice steady as he pointed to the gathered documents spread across the table. Maya stepped forward, her expression intense. "We need to target their supply routes immediately. If we cut off their resources, we weaken them significantly." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, but Kael could sense a shadow of hesitance lingering. "Are we sure we're ready for this?" Arlen asked, brow furrowed as he crossed his arms. "Last time didn't go as smoothly as we'd hoped." Kael recognized the fear behind his words, but felt a surge of determination. "We've learned from our mistakes. This time we adapt and ensure we have everything in place before making our move." The team nodded, Kael's confidence lighting a spark in their spirits as they began to dive deeper into planning, ready to turn their hard-won knowledge into decisive action. Kael felt the weight of the team's expectations as they finalized their plans and strategized their next steps. "Listen, our intel suggests they've increased security around the main supply routes," he said, focusing the group's attention on the maps laid out on the table. He felt a surge of determination, aware that they were not just fighting for themselves, but for everyone the syndicate had oppressed. Arlen shifted uneasily. "If we disrupt their supplies again, they won't take it lightly. We could be walking into a trap." Kael acknowledged the concern but refused to give in to fear. "That's why we're prepared to adapt. We have to disrupt their operations, and this is how we do it." As he laid out the specifics of the plan, Kael noticed the team's confidence solidifying, their determination growing as they prepared to face what lay ahead. As Kael wrapped up the meeting, he could see a mix of excitement and apprehension on his team's faces. "Let's make sure we know how to communicate throughout this mission," he reminded them, sensing the need for clarity amidst the uncertainty. Each member nodded, their determination evident as they prepared to confront the dangers ahead. "Should we have a backup plan?" one team member suggested, vulnerability creeping into their expression. Kael appreciated the input, knowing their previous experiences had left scars. "Absolutely. If things don't go as expected, we adapt. Trust yourselves and each other." His confidence rippled through the group, and Kael felt pride swell within him as he understood how far they had all come together. With renewed focus, they began to gather their gear and finalize preparations for the operation, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Kael gathered the team one last time, feeling the weight of their mission settling in. "Before we head out, let's review our roles in the plan," he said, his voice steady but firm as he focused on each member's responsibility. He could sense the anticipation in the room, eyes locking onto him as he laid out the final details, ensuring everyone felt prepared. "Arlen, you're still on distraction duty. Maya, keep tracking communications so we know what they're planning," he instructed, reinforcing their trust in one another. Everyone nodded, their expressions resolute, and Kael could see the unity they had forged through their struggles blossoming into something powerful. With a final look around, he felt a surge of confidence. They were ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead, their bonds stronger than ever as they prepared to confront the syndicate's hold on their city. Chapter 30, A Symbol of Hope. As the dust settled from their operation against the syndicate, Kael took a moment to reflect on the victories and losses they had faced. The atmosphere shifted, filled with an overwhelming sense of relief that mingled with the weight of what had transpired. He walked through the remnants of the stronghold, memories of the battles fought flooding his mind, each step a reminder of how far they had come. In the glow of the lingering fires, Kael saw his teammates regrouping and sharing hushed conversations, their expressions revealing both triumph and the shadows of doubt. This was a tangible moment of clarity for him. There was no turning back now, only the potential for new beginnings. With a newfound sense of responsibility, Kael gathered everyone together, ready to discuss their next steps and ensure they were united moving forward. Kael gathered the team in a quiet corner of the stronghold, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Now that we've dealt a significant blow to the syndicate, it's time to discuss what's next, he began, his voice steady as he looked around at the familiar faces. He gestured to the gathered intel, spreading the documents across a makeshift table, each file representing their hard work and sacrifice. This information can help us capitalize on their weaknesses and empower others to join our cause, he stated, feeling a surge of determination pulse through him. Maya stepped forward, her enthusiasm contagious as she highlighted several key points that could serve as a rallying cry for the community. Kael felt the optimism grow, the shared momentum reinforcing a sense of unity that would drive them to take action against the remnants of the syndicate. As Kael encouraged discussion among the team, he felt a mix of excitement and skepticism swirling in the room. "Are we really ready for what's next?" one team member ventured, uncertainty lacing their tone. Kael paused, reflecting on the weight of their recent accomplishments and the risks that lay ahead. "I believe we are," he replied, his voice firm and assured. "We've learned from every setback and strengthened our alliances. This is about more than just us. It's about the people who depend on us to take action." He noticed Maya nodding, her expression a mix of encouragement and concern. If we can rally the community around our cause, we can build a movement. Kael could feel the lingering doubts start to fade as the team engaged in a spirited dialogue, each member contributing ideas, their collective determination sparking a renewed focus. Kael stepped forward, drawing the team's attention as he laid out the specifics of their renewed mission. "Let's focus on how we can effectively distribute this information to the community," he said, his eyes scanning their faces for signs of engagement. He could feel the energy in the room shift as members began brainstorming ways to share their findings, suggestions sparking lively discussions that filled the space. Maya suggested organizing community meetings to explain the situation, her enthusiasm reinvigorating the group. Kael felt pride swell within him, recognizing how their shared purpose galvanized them to action and strengthened their bonds. "Exactly. We amplify our message, and the people will understand what they're up against," he encouraged, aware that their collective efforts would build momentum as they transformed their struggles into a powerful rallying cry. As the conversation flowed, Kael felt a surge of determination fuel his next steps. "Let's outline our approach," he said, taking charge of the meeting's direction as he broke down the logistics of their plans. He assigned tasks, making sure each person understood their role in rallying the community. Maya would lead outreach efforts while Arlen coordinated with local leaders to gather support. Kael felt the trust between them solidify as they embraced their responsibilities, the earlier tensions now transformed into a powerful drive toward action. "Remember, this isn't just a mission for us, it's for everyone who has suffered," he reminded them, a sense of conviction behind each word, bolstering their resolve as they prepared to take the next step. With their plans solidified, Kael felt a rush of energy as the team prepared to put their words into action. He shared a final look with Maya, an unspoken understanding passing between them, each recognizing the importance of their roles in the upcoming efforts. "Let's get started," Kael declared, a sense of purpose driving him forward as they moved out into the streets, ready to connect with the community. As they stepped outside, the buzz of the city surrounded them, the noise blending with a newfound excitement that fueled their resolve. Kael could see familiar faces in the crowd, a mix of hope and wariness reflected in their expressions, and he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility settle over him. This was more than a mission. It was a chance to inspire change and foster unity, paving the way for a better future for everyone they sought to protect. Chapter 31, Reflecting on Change. Kael returned to the safe house, the sounds of the bustling city fading behind him as he stepped into the familiar yet charged atmosphere. The weight of their recent victories hung heavy in the air, along with the palpable tension of what lay ahead. He took a moment to breathe, feeling the past few days' pressures ease slightly as he settled back into the rhythm of their daily tasks. As he moved around the space, Kael noticed subtle changes in his team's dynamic. There was a renewed sense of purpose among them, their commitment evident in the way they interacted. "Have you all seen the latest intel?" he called out, inviting everyone to engage and keep up the momentum. Kael felt a rush of pride, observing how their collective experiences and growth shaped the energy in the room, breathing new life into their shared mission. Kael laid out the latest reports on the table, the papers spread wide as he pointed to key points of interest. "Here's what we know about the syndicate's next moves," he explained, drawing his teammates in with a firm tone. Maya leaned over, her eyes scanning the details with palpable focus, actively engaged as she started making notes. "Given their resources, they might launch a counteroffensive soon," she suggested, her analytical nature shining through. Kael nodded, appreciating her insight, recognizing the urgency that echoed in her words. "Exactly. We need to prepare defenses while keeping an eye on potential allies and threats," he stated, feeling the team's collective understanding deepen as they honed in on the details of their approach. As the team continued to review the reports, Kael noticed some members shifting uneasily in their seats, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. "Are we fully committed to this plan?" One team member spoke up, their voice tinged with doubt. Kael felt a twinge of frustration, but quickly recognized the importance of addressing their concerns. "We have to be ready, no matter what. Retreating now would only give them the advantage." Maya joined in, backing him up with a steady tone. "We've come too far to turn back. We need to be proactive, not reactive." The dynamic in the room shifted as Kael admitted that their previous failures lingered in the background, adding to the weight of their current mission. "Every step we've taken has brought us to this point," he reinforced, ensuring they felt the significance of their journey and reminding them of their resilience. With a renewed sense of purpose, the team began discussing further adjustments to the plan, their commitment to one another, forging stronger bonds as they prepared for the challenges ahead. Kael looked around the room, noticing the lingering doubts, but also the flickering flames of determination in his teammates' eyes. "Let's take the next step together," he said, his voice steady, encouraging them to focus on their shared mission. He pointed to the maps again, reassessing their strategy as he wove together their contributions into a cohesive plan that factored in the new dynamics. "Every detail matters. We'll use our strengths and make sure each of us knows our part," he continued, illustrating his commitment to their collective success. The team members began to share their ideas more openly, a renewed focus lifting the atmosphere as brainstorming turned into an animated discussion. Kael appreciated the collaboration, feeling their previous difficulties give way to a powerful unity, a testament to their growth as a team and an affirmation of their determination to fight back. As the discussion reached a vibrant peak, Kael felt the momentum of their collaboration propelling them forward. "Let's gather our gear and finalize our roles," he urged, invigorated by their collective energy. Each member sprang into action, preparing their equipment and checking their supplies, the sense of urgency palpable. Kael moved among them, offering encouragement as he observed their determination transform into focused action. "Remember, we rely on each other. If any unexpected situations arise, communicate immediately," he reminded them, ensuring they understood the importance of teamwork. He could sense the trust and confidence building, knowing each decision they made together would be crucial in the fight against the syndicate. With their preparations nearly complete, Kael glanced around, feeling pride swell within him as he recognized how far they had come and how ready they were to face whatever lay ahead. As they finalized their preparations, Kael took a moment to look around the room, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. The weight of their upcoming mission settled in, but a sense of purpose filled the air as every team member was ready and focused. "Let's make sure we stick together out there," he reminded them, his voice steady, igniting a spark of solidarity among the group. Maya adjusted her gear, her determination palpable as she shared final thoughts on what they might need from the mission ahead. Kael appreciated her proactive approach, knowing that their collaboration was key. With one last glance at his team, he felt a rush of pride and confidence, aware that they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, emboldened by their collective commitment to the cause. Chapter 32, The Gathering Storm. In the aftermath of the conflict, Kael gathered the team in the safe house, the atmosphere charged with a mix of relief and lingering tension. He could see the exhaustion etched on their faces, but also a flicker of determination in their eyes as they processed what had transpired. "Before we move forward, we need to address what just happened," Kael said, his voice firm yet compassionate, urging them to confront their emotions openly. One team member spoke up, expressing guilt over the earlier chaos, revealing the emotional weight they all carried. Kael listened intently, knowing that acknowledging their feelings was crucial for healing and rebuilding trust. "It's important to learn from these moments together," he reminded them, his own sense of accountability shining through as he emphasized the value of facing their challenges as a united front. Kael encouraged the team to share their thoughts, allowing each member to voice their concerns and feelings about the recent conflict. Maya spoke up first, her voice steady as she reflected on the tension and fear that had crept in during the fight. "I felt overwhelmed," she admitted, vulnerability lacing her words. "It was hard to keep focused when everything spiraled out of control." Kael nodded, recognizing the impact of those moments on everyone involved. Another team member chimed in, agreeing with Maya, expressing their own doubts about the decisions made during the chaos. "It's okay to feel that way," Kael reassured them. "What matters is how we move forward and support each other." He could see the camaraderie strengthening as they spoke openly, acknowledging their struggles while simultaneously working to build a more resilient team. As the discussion continued, the team's trust began to solidify, their fears slowly being replaced by a shared determination. Kael took a moment to address the group, emphasizing the importance of learning from their past experiences. "Each of you has faced challenges that have shaped who you are today," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. He could see that his words struck a chord, igniting a fire in their hearts as they recognized their growth. "I want us to use these lessons to build a stronger team," Kael continued, inspiring a sense of purpose that had begun to develop through their shared journey. With their spirits lifted, the team began to discuss how they could better support each other in the future, reflecting on their growth not just as individuals, but as a cohesive unit. Kael felt the atmosphere in the room shift as the team members began to open up, sharing their perspectives on how to move forward. "Let's create a system where we check in with each other regularly," Maya suggested, her voice resolute. "We need to make sure everyone feels supported." Arlen nodded in agreement, adding, "And we should establish clearer roles for future missions. Knowing exactly what's expected can help reduce the uncertainty." Kael could sense their dedication to improvement, recognizing that these discussions were paving the way for a stronger framework moving forward. "I love those ideas," he said, feeling a renewed sense of purpose himself. "Let's document everything here and make it part of our ongoing strategy." With mutual excitement, they began outlining their plans. Kael's leadership further solidified by the contributions of his team as they shaped their next steps together. As the team worked together to implement their new strategies, Kael watched the energy in the room shift from uncertainty to determination. They began to assign specific roles for their upcoming mission, each member stepping forward with renewed confidence. Maya took the lead in organizing the outreach efforts, her enthusiasm infectious, as she encouraged others to join her in contacting potential allies. Kael felt pride swelling within him, recognizing not just his growth, but their collective journey from doubt to unity. "I'm counting on everyone to bring their best to the table," he said, firm in his belief that cooperation would lead them to success. With each shared idea and each task assigned, the team grew closer, solidifying their commitment to each other and their shared goals moving forward. With their plans solidified and responsibilities assigned, Kael felt a wave of determination wash over him. "Let's move out," he declared, leading the way as they gathered their gear and prepared to head into the streets once again. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and urgency, each team member clearly invested in the mission ahead. Kael took a moment to glance back at Maya, who was ensuring everything was in order, her focus unwavering. "You ready?" he asked, sensing the drive she had ignited in everyone. "Always," she replied with a confident smile, her resolve reflecting the growth they had all experienced together. As they stepped out into the night, Kael felt an unshakable bond among the team, their collective strength, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 33, Moving Forward. Kael stood at the edge of the town square, watching as community members gathered, drawn together by the promise of change. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, the remnants of their recent victories providing a backdrop of hope. He felt a mix of pride and responsibility swell within him, knowing that their efforts had begun to ignite a spark in the hearts of those around them. "Today marks a new beginning," he declared to the crowd, his voice resonating as he stepped forward, ready to share their vision. The faces of the townspeople were filled with anticipation, curiosity palpable in the air as they listened intently. Kael understood that this moment was not just about reclaiming their city, but about empowering its people to take control of their futures. As Kael spoke, he noticed Maya moving through the crowd, her natural charisma drawing people in as she engaged them in conversation. "Let's take this opportunity to share what we've learned," she suggested to him, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Kael nodded, appreciating her insight. Her ability to connect with others was invaluable in building a community that could unite against the remnants of the syndicate. Nearby, Arlen was discussing strategies with a group of local defenders, their hopeful faces reflecting the growing resolve to protect their town. "Together, we can establish a safety network," Arlen emphasized, outlining plans that extended beyond their immediate mission. Kael realized that the ambitions of his team were beginning to extend into the broader community, each person recognizing their capacity to contribute to a collective strength that could reignite their city's spirit. Kael took a step back, observing the interactions unfolding around him, feeling a swell of gratitude for the support of his team. He approached a small group of locals who were discussing potential improvements to street safety, their enthusiasm infectious. "Your suggestions could really make a difference," he said, genuinely impressed by their proactive approach. One of the locals, a woman with a determined look, nodded vigorously. "We can start organizing patrols and setting up community watch," she proposed, her confidence evident. Kael smiled, feeling a sense of pride in how the community was beginning to take ownership of their safety and future. This collaborative spirit was the foundation that would enhance their mission, reinforcing the idea that they were all in this together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Kael felt a sense of purpose settle over him as he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this pivotal moment. "We started this fight for our own freedom, but now it's about protecting our community." His words resonated through the crowd, igniting a spark of hope as the reality of their efforts began to take shape. With the support of local leaders and his team around him, Kael realized that they were building something significant. A coalition that represented not just survival, but a chance for change. He could see the excitement in their eyes. The realization that they could reclaim their city from the syndicate's grasp became a shared aspiration. Feeling the energy swell, he knew this was only the beginning. Their actions today would lay the groundwork for future adventures, fueling a movement that would protect and empower their community for years to come. With the discussions flowing, Kael felt a surge of determination to take action. "Let's put together a plan to target the remaining syndicate influence and rally the community for our cause," he proposed, his voice resonating with conviction. Maya leaned in, enthusiasm lighting her eyes. "We can organize community meetings to share our findings. The more people know, the stronger we become." As the team began to outline their plans, Kael noticed members stepping up, contributing their ideas and experiences, turning the energy of the room into a powerful engine for change. He felt proud to witness how far they had all come together, their individual journeys intertwining into a collective force for good. Kael knew that their collaborative efforts today were setting the stage for a movement that would extend beyond their immediate challenges, forging a future filled with new possibilities and hope. As the meeting drew to a close, Kael stepped back, taking a moment to absorb the energy in the room. The faces of his team and the community members shone with a mixture of hope and renewed purpose, each person excited about the future they could build together. He glanced at Maya, who was animatedly discussing strategies with a group of locals, her passion infectious. "Today is just the beginning," Kael said, projecting his voice to capture everyone's attention. "We can establish a network that not only protects us, but empowers each individual in our community." The response was immediate. Nods of agreement and messages of support filled the room, reflecting an optimism that had been lacking before. Kael felt a sense of fulfillment settle over him, knowing that their fight was far from over, but confident that they were united, ready to face future challenges together.